We'll be starting in 1 minute. If you would like to fill out your form for citizen comments, please do it this time. We will not be taking forms after we start at 5 o'clock. We need staff to focus on the meeting and the minutes and the time. Thank you. It's 5 o'clock, and we will be calling this meeting to order. Good evening, everyone, and thank you all for coming out to tonight's meeting. The Mayor Pro Tem is probably en route here, and also Councilwoman Cobb. We will start with our citizen comments. Citizens have 4 minutes. And council, you have 1 minute if you would like to ask questions or give a comment. We will start off with Linda Marcy. Ms. Marcy, you have 4 minutes. And good evening.
Hello, everyone. Hi. I'm here today to discuss the 6 cats per colony revised Chapter 6 ordinance. First, let me say that cats, even spayed and neutered cats, roam. It's their nature to roam. They do not permanently stay in a colony on a day-to-day basis. A feral cat can travel a mile in each direction from their colony, so a colony will never have the same feral count daily. A colony caregiver cannot control or guarantee that the caregiver will always have 6 cats in their colony. Having only 6 cat members in a colony is totally against helping the city of Killeen. The city staff has come up with the following information as to why this revision is being discussed by the city council. City staff had 4 items on their information. I'm going to talk about 2 of them. Number 2, the staff feels this limitation will alleviate some of the nuisance concerns that frequently occur when community cat colonies are established in residential areas. I feel this revision will cause an explosion of feral kittens and feral cats due to the fact that colony caregivers will not have access to do TNR on any additional cats above the 6 feral cats they have in their colony. Thus, no TNR means a lot of new kittens, usually 2 and up to 6 kittens per litter, resulting from at least 2 to 4 litters per year per female cat. Number 3, frequently receive complaints about nuisance cats and property damage when large numbers of community cats are fed in residential areas. I feel this revised language will cause a huge increase in nuisance complaints from Killeen residents due to the fact that colony caregivers are only allowed to TNR 6 cats in each colony. Therefore, any cats over 6 that visit the colony will continue to have kittens. Unintended consequences will be experienced by the city of Killeen if you agree that feral cat colonies should only have 6 cats in each colony. A limit of 6 cats in a colony will definitely backfire on the city of Killeen because there will be a definite huge decrease in TNR by caregivers because they have to stop after the 6 colony cats are in their colony. The current language and the definitions regarding feral cat colonies contained in Chapter 6 states, cat colony means a group of 1 or more free roaming or feral cats, whether managed or unmanaged. This current language should not be revised. It allows caregivers to TNR as many cats as possible, thus decreasing the feral cat population. This revised ordinance regarding feral cats will only create unintended consequences that have not been realized by the Killeen City Council and by the city staff. When it comes to the city of Killeen's TNR financial obligation, limiting colonies to only 6 cats, This will definitely cost Killeen a lot of money for items such as the time they will have to spend for the cost of the tracking, catching, or trapping, transporting to the shelter, shelter care, TNR care, such as spaying, neutering, rabies shots, chips, increased staff partnership, food, additional medical treatment, and the cost of necessary euthanasias of the extra cats. An avalanche of nuisance complaints being filed with the city of Killeen will be dealt with, have to be, by the city staff. Also, the huge amount of additional feral cats will lower the live release rate for the shelter and cause the Killeen Animal Shelter's reputation to be even worse than it is currently. I hope you, the Killeen City Council members, and the Killeen City staff can realize and understand that this revision will cost the city of Killeen a lot of money, put a burden on city staff, do away with any TNR of all cats from number 7 upwards, and take city money that could be used for other purposes. Let the colony caregivers keep doing unlimited TR work, and
Ma'am, your time is up.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Wayne Commons?
Ma'am, I relinquish to the next speakers and stuff. I just got here. I just want to listen a little bit more, gain a little bit more information, if you don't mind.
Sir, would you like to come up? Because I'm not going back. You can speak now, or you can pass on your time.
I'll pass right now.
Shirley DeConti? Good evening, ma'am. You have 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, first of all, I would like to respond to all the references concerning length of time to rewrite Chapter 6 ordinance. At that time, I was a committee member. Reports involving specific timelines, research for many different things, including definitions, which has never been properly done. And oh yeah, let's just throw COVID in there too. The ordinance was done, but still had to be reviewed for duplications, to add page numbers for references, and to be redlined. It was a lot of work and covered all animals. In September of last year, we, Subcommittee for Chapter 6 Ordinance, was told we had to hurry up and finish it, that Ms. Marzi was not going to be voted in to remain on the committee. Ms. Marzi was vice chair of the committee, also chair of the subcommittee, and rewriting, the subcommittee for rewriting the ordinance. She was doing all the computer work. She volunteered, and we appreciated it. I don't have a computer. I definitely appreciated her volunteering. There wasn't enough time to finish after being spoken to and treated the way we were treated. It was obvious that my concerns and time and effort was not appreciated. This was one of my reasons that, along with Ms. Marzi and 2 others, that led to our resignations. I do not understand the restrictions that my city is proposing for our animals. Right now, it seems to be cats. It will not solve any problems. The cat haters, and there are quite a few in Killeen, will never be satisfied until you rid the city of all cats. That's what a cat hater is. Is that your goal? I don't know. I'm wondering. So are a lot of other people. I guess that comes after you propose to limit the number of pets per household. Killeen will never be known as a pet-friendly city unless you all change your attitudes and act accordingly. You treat them like you do a paper towel, disposable. Thank you.
Thank you. Janice Holliday? Good evening, ma'am. You have 4 minutes.
A humane city is characterized by the presence of leadership, institutions, and policies working collaboratively across systems to create, implement, and implement sustainable human, animal, and environmental welfare. In addition to improving animal welfare, cities that align their policies with these humane tenets of compassionate engagement may accrue important economic, public health, and social benefits for their human residents. That's from an executive summary of a study conducted by the University of Denver and their graduate program in social work. They looked at the city of Austin to determine how compassionate animal policies impacted their bottom line. They found, at a very conservative estimate, $157 million benefit to the city of Austin once they implemented compassionate policies and compassionate laws. It is in the city's best interest to listen to animal advocates because that actually affects the entire city and does affect the bottom line of the city. It is for the well-being of all residents. As a lifetime 60-year resident of Killeen, I've seen a lot of things happen. I'm not always proud of my city. I'm always proud of the diversity of my city, first and foremost. And secondly, when I became an animal rescuer, I became very proud of the fact that we had some of the most progressive animal ordinances in the state. We actually had an anti-tethering law before the city of Dallas did, and before the state did. This is a regressive ordinance, looking at limiting the number of feral cats. It's not based on science. I understand that Ms. Singh looked for policies and looked for ordinances to give us a number, but that's not based on any kind of scientific research, nor is it even looking at the live release rate for the city from which that ordinance was borrowed. It doesn't look at whether or not it even reduced nuisance calls. When caregivers, feral colony caregivers bear the brunt of the cost of trapping and neutering. They bear the cost of the financial cost of population control. If you stop them and tell them that the law says they can't TNR after 6 and they're done, it doesn't mean the cats stop coming. It means they stop being spayed and neutered. And they stop being spayed and neutered at someone else's expense. That means now the city has to deal with it. The city will end up with an explosion in the population of cats. They will either have to spend the time and effort to trap them, round them up, deal with them. Even euthanizing them is an expense. Why not let citizen caregivers bear the brunt of the expense of population control? We could do more education, we could work with people. I understand there's a need to balance this out, but at this point in time, this policy may lead to an explosion of feral cats and to even more nuisance calls. I think this is counterproductive. I'm a little frustrated as a member of the committee because I thought we were still researching this and we're going to discuss it in our April meeting and then would bring it to council after that. So I'm a little behind the curve as far as researching it, but I think this should be looked at much more carefully. So please consider this and please understand that there's an economic cost as well as a moral cost to making these kinds of decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Verna Hood. Mr. Hood? Yes, sir. Good evening, sir. You have 4 minutes. Mr. Hood, are you ready, sir?
I'm here for something completely different.
Okay, sir.
Sorry.
Oh, no, sir, no need to apologize. Mr. Sue Commons? Sue Commons? Good evening, ma'am. You have 4 minutes.
Hello, City Council members. My name is Sue Cummings. I'm here about the concern about our cats in the city. Y'all have heard several advocates. These are all animal advocates back here, especially cats. and I'm one as well, I will tell you that. I have served on the Killeen Animal Advisory Committee for a few months, and I guess it's about a year now, not, but close to a year. And recently, the Code of Ordinances on Animals was discussed in our meeting. In fact, I believe February was our last discussion on it. And the section about residential community cat colonies should be limited to no more than 6 cats at one time. I will tell you that the committee could not come to an agreement. Some thought it should be taken out. Some thought we should have, more than the number 6. It was never agreed on. And I know it's in the bylaw. I see that it's in what you were given tonight. So I just want you to know, I don't agree with it. I don't think 6, it's an arbitrary number. I mean, you can put any number down. I think some cat colony caregivers can handle more than others. It depends on the neighborhood, depends on a lot of things. And so if it has to be in there, I think it should be on a case-by-case basis. Again, that's my opinion, and I know you've already probably formed your opinions on this. I want you to think about it long and hard, because it makes me heartsick to think how many cats are going to be euthanized, killed, because of this ordinance. So I think our euthanization rate is just way out of hand. I know we need to do something about it, but I just don't think this is the way to do it. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Commons, would you like to speak now, or you want me to come back to you?
No, I'll speak.
Come on up, sir. You have 4 minutes. And good evening, sir.
Good evening. You're not taking off my time for me walking up here with a limp.
That's okay. Take your time.
Good deal. Mr. Cummings here, tried to establish a cat colony, got a cat colony established around Petco. We have 4 cats. This cat colony has been around for about a year and a half. And every time we establish a year and a half, get this cat colony going, there were requirements put out. We met every requirement put out by the city of Killeen to establish this cat colony, only to have it come back about 2 or 3 months later saying, well, you got to add this, you got to add that. Either we're going to have colonies in Killeen or we're not. It's just that simple, okay? We can't, tell the cats where to reside, okay? My colony is down by a creek, okay? It's a natural cat habitat. Cats come there. Right now, our cat population is 6, okay? All right, now, you can't stop the rain from falling, okay? The cats are going to come and they're going to go. But my deal is that if we're going to have a cat colony established, this thing has been dragging out for a year. Let's put it to rest, okay? This Chapter 6 stuff, you have the requirements. We've met these requirements for a year now, okay? And you know what? We take care of the colony, we feed our cats, we police the area around where we're at. We have the approval of the local authority and stuff, okay? Let us, if you're going to have cat colonies, establish it. Let's get the rules, let's get it over with, instead of dragging out about a year and a half. It's not necessary. We're the ones who are taking care of it, not the city of Killeen. We're doing you guys a favor, by taking care of these cats and stuff, okay? And like I say, I just want to get, the ground rules, quit changing the ground rules every about 2 or 3 months and stuff. Another problem is with whoever handles the animal situation, whenever they're cat friendly, all of a sudden they're fired, okay? And then another reason is that, we've had in a year, you've had about 3 people relieved down there of the cat, animal response down there in Killeen and stuff. And then when you have the people relieve, a new person come in there and change the habits and stuff, okay? Let's have the cat colonies establish, okay, the rules and stuff, and, have somebody in there that's going to quit changing it for about 5 or 10 minutes. You know what? Everybody in here owned cats. I mean, everybody in here owned animals and stuff. If you own an animal, raise your hand. Raise your hand if you own an animal. You see what we're dealing with right now? It's not only cats and stuff. You see where this is going? Everybody in here owns an animal, okay? All right? They might not be cats or anything else, but everybody in here, about 90% of the people here own animals. You see where this is going, okay? Let's get the cat colonies, laws established, and bylaws, something that we can all live with and be happy with and stuff. Don't, make it easy on yourselves and stuff. We enjoy the colonies. We enjoy doing it. We enjoy cats, okay? And that's all I've got to say is that, we're here. Give us a chance. The cats colonies have already been established, so I don't understand what the problem is, okay? Put down the rules and stuff, something that everybody in here can live with, because we don't want this to come back later on and be something that it could have been solved in the first place at a low level instead of a high level. There are an awful lot of animal lovers in Killeen. You understand where I'm coming from, okay? We enjoy the cat colonies. Let us take care of them, okay? Make it uneasy on everybody here. I think everybody that owns a cat colony do a good job.
Thank you, sir. Melissa Brown. You have 4 minutes. Good evening.
Just along the lines of what the previous speakers had been speaking about, my understanding is that the committee, although the council had originally given the directive that the committee should be the one making the recommendations for the changes, no matter how fast or how slow that process was, based on cooperation that was or wasn't there from city staff. Anything that came back should have been their recommendation. Their recommendation should have been included, not just there was no consensus made by the committee about any numbers. So what was the recommendation from the committee then? Because as a citizen, as someone who's trying to stay involved, it gets very discouraging when the council says, we want your input, we want your advice. And then the very people that the council appoint to sit on these boards are the very people who are ignored and not listened to, that their recommendations never make it in front of this council, and that they never get to come up and present that information themselves as to what they wanted to see changed. So I think that would be something that needs to be taken into consideration. Moving on, Reese Creek and Bunny Trail are 2 areas where we know we have a lot of issues with traffic, with flooding, with numerous infrastructure problems. We have a university district, which, to read it out of our code of ordinance, the purpose of the university district is to preserve and enhance the surrounding property values, prevent overcrowding of land and undue concentration of population, and to promote land use consistent with neighboring properties. When you go down through and you read through the list of what is ideally put in the university district, increased numbers of single-family housing or duplexes not in there. In fact, most of what should be put in there should be something equivalent to what would be put in a B2 business area. Why in the world would the city consider annexing in another 222 acres of land right now for an additional almost 5,000 population, assuming the minimum number of people per housing unit, when it's going to have 1,700 units in it? We're going to put in almost 2,000 units in an area on Bunny Trail, and we have an enormous amount of flooding, traffic backups and delays. And when it comes to drainage, right now our standards say that a developer has to make sure that the drainage meets the existing standards that are there. We are currently getting ready to pay millions of dollars upon over the millions that we've already spent on engineering to do complete reconstruction of Bunny Trail and the drainage along there. Allowing this to be built at this time would allow the developer to essentially maintain the current drainage standards and not the improved ones that we'll have once the Bunny Trail engineering is completed and done. I think that at a very minimum, this should wait. But if we look at it a little bit further, this is in the controlled growth sector on the growth sector map. and it is actually listed as traditional neighborhood under our future land use map, not a residential mix. This is not fitting in with what we have in the Flume. This is not fitting in. We're getting ready to build or ask for a bond for 3 new fire stations for the population we already have before we annex in 220 more acres and build another 1,700 houses there. And I'd like to end on a question. Is the length of Mohawk Drive depicted in the presentation the part of Mohawk that is already existing, or is it the new extension? Because if it's new, I suspect that would save the city $9 million and not
Your
having to
time
build
is
it
up.
ourselves.
Ms. Anna Nagu? Anka? Good evening, ma'am. You have
Good
4
evening.
minutes.
Council members, Madam Mayor, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. It is an honor and a privilege to be a member of the Crime Solutions Committee, and I thank the council for the opportunity. I want to make it very clear there's plenty of support for the Crime Solutions Committee. There's no good reason to dissolve it. If we can prevent one crime, that is good enough reason to keep the committee. I want to thank Bell County Commissioners for their participation and support of this committee. I also want to thank Killeen Police Chief Kimball for taking the time to attend and participate in the past 2 committee meetings. As I stated, there's plenty of support for the committee. I would challenge anyone who wants to dissolve this committee to tell Chief Kimball that his participation and support are not good enough to keep going. Go ahead, tell him. I want to remind everyone that at the March 21st council meeting, several citizens expressed serious safety concerns about a situation happening in a neighborhood where a child watch home was in Killeen. The situation is so serious that one citizen came up here and expressed the willingness to use lethal force against a child if necessary. That's how serious it was. The citizens were invited by council to attend the Crime Solutions Committee meeting scheduled for the next day. Less than 24 hours later, the council canceled the meeting. This sent a message to them that their safety concerns were not important enough to the council. Citizens took time off from work to make the meeting just to find out that it was canceled. Their safety concerns do not matter to the council, apparently. The committee meetings were canceled several times at the last minute last year, too. It made it very difficult to invite anyone to attend the meetings. My recommendation is to keep the committee, and if anyone is no longer interested in being on the committee, that is not a problem. It is okay to resign, but please, let's not tell citizens to attend the meeting and turn around and cancel it. Regarding the agenda item on animal ordinances, the staff presentation says that very little progress was made by the subcommittee formed to recommend ordinance changes. This is not true. I was on that subcommittee. A lot of progress was made. The subcommittee finished going through all of Chapter 6 and making recommendations. However, city staff did not attend most of those meetings, and they were not aware of all the progress we made. Eventually, due to the lack of participation from the city, it was clear to the subcommittee members that our recommendations would not be welcomed by staff or council, and that our efforts were in vain. This contributed greatly to the resignations you will hear about. In addition, documented evidence shows that Killeen Animal Shelter staff were in violation of state law and also made false statements publicly on multiple occasions. All of this apparently without any accountability or repercussions. This was just too much for us regular citizens to overcome, and it contributed greatly to our resignations. As always, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. And I can only speak about the last Crime Solution Committee meeting that was canceled. They did not have a quorum. And so without the members there, you cannot have a meeting. So that is why the last Crime Solution Committee meeting was canceled. With that being said, Mr. Mike Fornino. Good evening, sir. You have 4 minutes.
Madam Mayor, my name is Michael, not Mike. I would ask for that courtesy in that respect. The question of dissolving or keeping the Crime Solutions Committee. I agree with Ms. Nagu's comments, although my reservations with the Crime Committee are this. I would say to dissolve it immediately in its current form. Your chair, Madam Mayor, to your right, sits empty. Okay, the chairman of the Crime Solutions Committee doesn't take his duties on the council seriously enough. He dodges meetings for the Crime Solutions Committee, and as previously stated, the gentleman who should be sitting to your right is not present. He has a smug indifference toward the citizens. His leadership on that, in 1 year of his alleged hard work, the top 2 crime problems plaguing the city of Killeen are runaway teenagers and shoplifting. No mention of gangs, violent crime, illegal weapons, harder drugs such as methamphetamine, cocaine, fentanyl. That's what he comes up with after a whole year? That smug indifference, despite input from other citizens, and it was only out of morbid curiosity that I attended last week's meeting, just to see if he would actually show up. And unless it comports with the world according to Ken Wilkerson, it doesn't get on the agenda. And that's offensive. And that goes to the spirit of what Mrs. Brown was saying and Mrs. Nagu were saying, where the citizens wanted the committee. The citizens wanted it to be dynamic. When you take into consideration the facts that, again, your chair to your right sits empty. He's not even here for a meeting start that considers the fate of his committee. I mean, what does that say? That says he doesn't care. The citizens do, but he controls the keys to the kingdom on that, and that's just not the way it's supposed to work. Okay? This is a character flaw of his. He has a long history, both military and civilian, of having questionable assessment of people that he's supposed to be in charge of. Okay? The last time, and one
Mr.
of the most...
Fornino, if you want to talk about the agenda item, you can. If you
I
want
can,
to
and
talk-
it goes to the direct character.
If you want to talk about the agenda item, you can.
This is the agenda item.
Anything about an individual personal
individual
life,
sits
this or
on the
not,
individual-
it's irrelevant. Stick to the subject.
I'm sorry, but the First Amendment is not for your convenience or
You
comfort,
can
Madam Mayor.
stick to the subject or take
It
your
is the
seat.
subject. It goes to the root of the subject. It is prima facie and res ipsa loquitur. Madam City Attorney, those should be terms that are very familiar to you in the legal realm. Okay?
It's
That goes to
crime
the core of my
solution.
argument. Those are legal terms that you're obviously not familiar with,
You can
Madam Mayor.
stick to the subject or take a seat.
This is the subject.
It's on the agenda.
It is poorly led by a person who is not clearly qualified to lead such a body. Okay? The citizens are right, the leadership is wrong, as I keep stating. That man's chair is empty. Again. That tells us what he thinks of us as a people and in the discharge and execution of his duties. He has a long history of that. That's the core of it. I don't care if it's inconvenient to him. I don't care if it's impolite. It's true. The guy is never here. He doesn't care about us. And clearly, by the fact that you're trying to defend that, says that neither do you. Listen to us. You represent us, not your own interests. As the people at the animal issue said, listen to us, not your own personal interests. Get that through your heads.
Thank you. And for the we do not clap. The reason the Mayor Pro Tem is not here is personal reasons. There is a point in time that we all have to not attend meetings that we're scheduled to attend. Family comes first. The next person on the agenda is Amanda Coley. Good evening, ma'am. You have 4 minutes.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Yes, ma'am.
I have met a few of you personally, and I have met a lot of you not at all. Hi, how are you? I'd like to speak tonight on a few animal control issues, not necessarily the control issues, but mainly the fact that it's coming across that No one understands the rights or the Bill of Rights or any of the rights at this moment, so let me explain my situation. Bruce, my dog, my personal animal, I'm pretty sure every one of you have heard of. Bruce was taken from my home, where he reside, where he slept with my children, not just my children, me, my husband. He slept in our home. He was taken away from us with an animal collar, shock collar, to keep him in the yard. Hearsay seems to be the theme of animal control. I don't like the way your dog looked at me. I don't like the way your cats were gathering over there. It's a
Ma'am, I
lot of hearsay.
apologize. Which item are you talking about? You signed up for OR 23-008?
The pet ordinances.
Right, so you
and
have
the
to
dangerous dog.
Right, you're talking
Right.
about aggressive dogs,
Yes.
correct? Okay,
And
continue.
any other nuisance animal that the city deems a nuisance. So at the end of it, I will say this. He was caused a lot of stress, which to me is beyond sadistic and inhumane, realistically. Y'all want to put down animals? I get it. $50 per head, wonderful. That's where, if that is y'all's prerogative, by all means, feel free. But my prerogative is to keep my children happy. My prerogative is to keep my home safe. And I feel like my amendments, not just one, not just two, but over 4 of them were violated in one sitting. Now, today I went and had my Bill of Rights again violated. Who has $2,000, I'm sorry, to be specific, $2,300 in their back pocket? Does anybody have that as citizens who pay their bills? I have 4 children. 2 of them are graduating high school. One will be going off to college, the other one will be staying to work. Very proud of my babies. I don't have this. This would be considered cruel and unusual punishment, wouldn't you agree? Anyone? I have a choice to pay a bill that y'all have put upon me for something that someone has not proven. Nobody has proven this correct. But yet, you're right, it's upon me. I'll just not feed my children. Correct. But yet, I've lived in this city for over 20 years. Again, I have 2 children graduating this year. I'm very, very proud of my babies. But I am not proud of the place that I live now because I have to look at my youngest one and explain to her why they came, took her dog, and killed him. Because someone else said that that's where he was. With no probable cause, all hearsay, and even at the time, your judge back there, he made the very same comment. Oh, well, they couldn't tell him from any other dog, but yet, you're right, he does need to be put down. That's my fault. The burden of proof has always been on the government. Y'all took an oath, each and every one of you did, to uphold the rights in which we value. I couldn't even speak to, it took everything in me. But again, y'all want to take the burden of proof and put it on everybody else. But I ask you, Proverbs 12:10, the righteous man cares for his animals but does not tender mercies of the wicked is cruel. I feel like now y'all are being cruel.
Thank you. Mr. Gabriel Matabo? Good evening, sir. You have 4 minutes.
Good evening, City Council and my fellow citizens. Today, I want to talk to you guys today about something that has long-lasting implications for the city of Killeen. Crime is the #1 issue of facing the city of Killeen. I believe that the next police chief that we hire has to truly be someone of integrity. You know, about 4 months ago, it was about 8 o'clock at night, and I was turning off the lights in my home. And I lived in my house since I was about 3 years old. And I began to hear gunshots. It was about 3 in succession. And I remember thinking to myself, when did we get to the point that this has become normal? We need to hire a police chief urgently. We urgently need to hire a police chief that is community focused, community policing focused, and serious about reducing crime that disproportionately affects the north side of Killeen. Ladies and gentlemen, no one ever gets anywhere by themselves. And if we want to make Killeen a better place, I live and work in District 1. I grew up in District 1. My business is in District 1. We need to make crime, reducing crime, a top priority. So with that being said, I just want to tell you guys from the bottom of my heart, the next police chief that you all pick should be someone that is community policing focused and serious about reducing crime. And it's been about 3 months. It's time. I can speak for all of us. We want to live in a safe Killeen. That's the biggest things that we hear about in Killeen. No one ever wants to come to Killeen. Everyone always wants to come to Harker Heights. Let's start now, but it has to start at the head. And City Council, I just want to implore you guys that the next police chief that you guys pick, is someone that is community, and I'm going to keep saying it, someone that is community focused and serious about reducing crime. And you know what? It's our kids. We're doing this for our kids. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Jack Ralston. Good evening, sir. You have 4 minutes. What's so funny?
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council, City Manager. Just a couple things, real quick. First off, bottom line up front, I don't think we need a new City Hall anytime soon. Got a couple reasons for it. One, we're in it. We spent a lot of money fixing this one. Previous to that, we bought the First Baptist Church right down the street. That was supposed to be the City Hall. That didn't happen. We bought 15 acres out by the current police station. That was supposed to be a City Hall. None of that happened. I'm not sure that until we decide whether we actually need one, other than just wanting one, because this is a want, not a need, and we're going to spend $108,000 figuring out what it looks like. I suspect that we've got some folks here at the city that we're paying a lot of money that could probably come up with a pretty darn good idea without spending it elsewhere. And we're spending a lot of money, too. Stagecoach, we're going to spend $1.9 million, $1.9 million figuring out how to build Stagecoach. Well, Stagecoach is a mess because we had low standards and failed to achieve them. It fell apart. It wasn't because we didn't, of anything in a plan. We just didn't follow the plan. The other piece I'm looking at is this city, we've got a little bit better piece with real estate and such because of Fort Hood, right? Fort Hood provides a whole lot of turnover, lots of houses, the city's growing. But the bond market itself, which pays for a lot of our stuff, makes the city a lot of money, is not doing that well. We've got a lot of outstanding debt. One of the things that irritates me, and I guess kind of disappoints me is more than irritated, I spoke with the city manager about, is we're carrying infrastructure as an asset on the audit in the budget. Infrastructure is not an asset. It's a liability. And we don't have any way of paying for it except by running this Ponzi scheme where we convince people to build more housing developments so we can take that money that they're not using for their streets and go fix somebody else's streets. Although I drove in on some streets, and although we're making progress, we're not fixing all of our streets. We're spending other money that just doesn't seem quite right. Or at least there doesn't seem to be a plan. Our total debt, according to the audit, is $227.4 million. That's a fair piece of change. I'm sure that some of us got that in our pocket, but they're probably not in here. We have things that the fire department is going to apply for this grant, and this grant is going to provide about $400,000 for the city. But it's going to hire 2 fire chiefs and what is 18 firefighters.
I apologize,
For 3
sir.
years.
Is this on the agenda, or are we still on?
Yes, it is. It's on the city hall. Professional services for Killeen City Hall and Municipal Court Complex.
Correct.
Did you
So,
not read that?
Sir, what I'm trying to say is this, what does that has to do with the fire?
I'm saying why we shouldn't be building a new city hall, because we have a whole lot of debts out there that we need to take care of first before we buy a new city hall, so that you guys can have a bright, new, shiny building, because this one's not bright, shiny, new enough. It's a couple years old. And because you just want one. Isn't that it? Is that why you're trying to shut me down? Because I'm actually explaining why I'm against it? No? Yes? I don't hear an answer, so I'm going to assume that that's the reason. If we're going to hire, we did this with 10 police officers some time ago. We got a grant for 3 years for 10 police officers to pay for. And then at the end of 3 years, we had to dig up the money to pay these officers. Now we're going to have about 20 firemen that we're going to get, and we don't have a plan for that either.
Thank you, sir.
You're
Mrs. Victoria Watkins. Good evening, ma'am. You have 4 minutes.
Good evening. Tonight, I'm speaking as someone who is actively working in the community to better our animals' lives. I don't believe in sitting idly clamoring for change. I believe in bringing it with my own hands. I'm here to talk about the community cats and the plan to enforce the limits on them. Community cats can cause problems, and something should be done to control them, but limiting our colony numbers is not going to reduce the cat numbers or prevent litters. Number restrictions are difficult for a colony caretaker and a city to enforce, especially with the amount of owned animals that are continuously dumped. A majority of them end up seeking refuge at the cat colonies. Studies over the last 10 years have shown that lethal catch and kill methods are not effective. Community cats that go into the shelter do not come out, lowering the live release rate. The problem is nothing changes with removing the cats. As soon as the old ones leave, new ones move in due to food sources, either wild or from human interaction. This phenomenon is what we call the vacuum effect. What has been proven as the most effective at controlling community cat population is trap, neuter, return. TNR was proven to work in Europe and was started in the United States 10 years ago. TNR is when the cat is trapped, sterilized, vaccinated for rabies and other diseases. The ear is tipped to show they've been through the program, and the cat is returned back. Sterilization stops the spread of disease, stops mating behavior like fighting and spraying. It reduces cat roaming, and the cat's overall health improves. Best of all, no new kittens flood the shelters and the streets and causes what is known as kitten season, the time of year when hundreds of thousands of kittens arrive in the shelter. This is much more humane solution than catch and kill. TNR keeps the colony numbers stable, and long-term has been proven to reduce the overall number of cats, not including the ones that just aren't being born. During an 11-year study of TNR at the University of Florida, the number of cats on campus declined by 66%, with no new kittens being born after the first 4 years of operation. A study of the impact of TNR on cat colonies in Italy also observed colony size decrease between 16 and 32% over a 10-year period. A TNR program at Texas A&M University neutered 123 cats in its first year and found no new litters of kittens the following year. And it's not just beneficial for the cats, it's beneficial for the shelter. Studies show that the shelter intake in euthanasia declined significantly after implementing a TNR program. Less cats, less kittens coming in. It is that simple. TNR reduces the spending of taxpayer dollars. Because catch and kill is a futile effort that does not work, continuing to pour time and resources into an approach that has no effect is a huge waste. A TNR program is an efficient and humane solution, which is what most people want. A Harris Interactive study determined that when asked, over 80% of Americans said they would rather leave a cat alone on the streets rather than have it caught and killed at the shelter. They are a high rabies risk. That's not true. They can carry rabies, but it's been over 40 years since there was a confirmed case of rabies spread by cats. The Department of Health states that on average there are 2 cases of rabies a year, and it's from dogs or bats. Colonies can keep growing, but this is usually new cats showing up. With the TNR program in place, colony caretakers can act fast and ensure new arrivals are quickly sterilized. Our neighbor, Harker Heights, implemented a low-cost TNR program for its citizens, and in 1 year has seen promising results, including a lowered amount of kittens, fewer sick animals, and a 7% jump in their live release rate, showing us that this can be done. And it's time for us to move forward, not backward.
Thank you so much. That was the last citizen comments. Mr. Cagle or Mrs. Singh, do y'all have any comments before I move forward with the council?
I would recommend, we're planning to give the presentation on the community cat ordinance, so I can address a lot of them through that if the council wishes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cagle. Thank you, sir. Councilmember Sagara.
Just real quick, and I was going to ask the last speaker since she was there speaking, but I understand and I heard a lot of you guys speak, but, I was trying to narrow down what the one thing on this ordinance that you don't like. And from my understanding, it's the amount of cats in a cat colony, if that's it. So right now it's 6. And the part that you don't agree, just for my clarification, what is that? If you can come back out here and just clarify that for me, because I just want to know what it is that you guys are looking for.
Well, you can't restrict cats to a colony, sir. Last numbers showed there's over 40,000 stray cats in Killeen. Some of those are wild, untamable, they can't be pets. Some of those are domesticated, they were dumped or they're strays. And they show up when they want. You can't tell a cat that shows up at your colony, shoo, go away, we don't want you here. There's no way for us to enforce that. And so we don't want to be penalized, but we also don't want the shelter to show up and say, well, you have 8 cats here, so we're going to take 2 of these community cats to the shelter. Because when they go to the shelter, they are going to be euthanized.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I don't understand, and I'm just trying to clarify because, I was told that we want it at 1. And so from my perspective, okay, well, now if you got 2,
Right.
then that means you take 2 and take them.
Yeah.
And so I still have a hard time figuring that, and hopefully with this presentation, it'll clarify, but I still don't understand. If you got 6, you got 8, you're going to take 2.
Right.
Well, then you guys want at 1, that means you're going to take.
I will tell you, as someone who does TNR and works
Yeah.
with community cats, none of us want community cats.
Got it.
Community cats aren't a good thing, but you cannot get rid of them. The best thing to do is sterilize them so they don't continue to reproduce. That is the best way
All right,
to
appreciate it.
control the spread.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Items for discussion at regular city council meeting on April 11th, 2023. I'd like to thank you all for your comments and recommendations tonight, and we will be hearing from our assistant city manager with your report. Madam Secretary, consent agenda. Council, you have 5 minutes to speak 2 times.
MN 23007, consider minutes of regular city council meeting of March 14th, 2023. RS 23064, consider a memorandum resolution for the purchase of aquatics chemicals from Progressive Commercial Aquatics in an amount not to exceed $85,000.
Good evening, Mrs. Nook. How are you doing?
Just fine. Mayor, council? Tonight, we have an item before you for the purchase of aquatics chemicals. The Recreation Services Department offers multiple water activities with 3 aquatic facilities.
Ma'am, it was not for you to speak. If the council had any questions or
okay.
anything, no, ma'am. All right, thank you.
Okay,
You're so
thank you.
kind for coming up. Resolution. Council, you have 5 minutes to speak twice. Madam Secretary.
RS 23042. Consider a memorandum resolution authorizing a professional services agreement with Brinkley Sargent Wigington Architects, Inc. for a needs assessment and conceptual layout of a new city hall and municipal court complex in the amount of $108,295, tabled from the February 28th, 2023 regular city council meeting.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mr. Cagle.
Yes, ma'am, Mayor and Council, this is the same presentation that we had last time. But I will tell you, if you want to look at the agreement that was in the packet, this is not about making pretty pictures. That's one part of a deliverable to give one example. But this is doing a lot of pre-work, of site work, of finding out the size of the facility that's needed with the number of people and allowing for growth, and what the public space needs to be, the ADA requirements, the number of restrooms for the size of the building, the parking, the layout. There's the possibility of closing a street where the current city facilities are. There's engineering involved. This is all pre-work. As I said last time, this is not construction plans. I said that for a facility of this size, that's probably going to be 7 figures. This is very much preliminary work, and if you'll notice on, when we talk about the needs assessment, task 1B, site visits, architectural tour existing city halls and courts with the client. These observations will assist the city to determine the goals and expectations for the project. I think I will say that, yes, this council chambers is very nice, but a city hall is much more than a council chambers. This building is almost 100 years old, and it has severe problems. And when we discussed putting money into this facility to stabilize the floor, to make sure we could have heat and air conditioning, the council appropriately questioned, why are we putting this kind of money into a building this old that is inadequate in size to start with? We have city employees scattered all over town that are constantly driving to different meetings, we have people show up at this facility on a daily basis looking for building permits, looking for human resources. Those services are typically in the same building. And I think that's what the council's direction was about. Why would we continue to put millions into this building when it's inadequate to start with? There's only a handful of city employees that actually work in this building. The majority of our employees are scattered all over the north part of Killeen and W.S. Young. So I'm not for sure where else you want to go with this. I'd be happy to answer any questions. But you did ask for this to be put back on this agenda.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Cagle, we have a facility, the City Hall, but we cannot utilize all of it. So it's counterproductive that you can only use the first, the second floor, and the third floor. Half for that is messed up, so.
We can use half. We can only use half of the third floor.
So I can see it from that perspective. Anyone else that, this, okay. Just raise your hand, please. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. We heard from the Downtown Merchants Association last week on Thursday during our special bond meeting. I was glad to see that many stakeholders come out, downtown property owners, business owners, and they all spoke overwhelmingly in favor of moving forward with this item. This is one of those things that it can be a tough conversation because the one con is the price tag. That's the only con that anybody can seem to bring up about it. But there's so many more pros than there is cons, and the money is going to be spent regardless. If you think the city's going to save money by not building a consolidated services city hall, I got some oceanfront property I can sell you in Arizona, because it's not the case, it's not going to happen. The money's going to get spent either way. It's just whether you're going to spend it efficiently and effectively and responsibly, or you're going to spend it maintaining old buildings spread out through the entire city. Instead, we could take these other buildings, sell them off back to private businesses, put them back on the tax rolls, make them productive properties, and consolidate services and make it more of an efficient process for taxpayers and residents that need those services in a one-stop shop. So it's a no-brainer to me, but thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Let me start by saying I support the recommendation to engage an architect for the formal needs assessment and conceptual layout of a new Killeen City Hall, as well as municipal court complex. So that will have my support when it comes time to vote for that. But I did have a question just for the city manager's office. I know on February 28th, we made a motion of direction to receive a preliminary needs assessment prior to the vote. Do we have that today?
I think we had a bit of a discussion at the workshop about the $2.5 million or so to fix the immediate problems in this facility, the number of employees that we will be adding in the future, especially in the police department, and the cost for constantly moving city employees around different buildings around North Killeen. I mean, there's not going to be some formula that says at this point you need a new city hall. It's all those factors together. If we don't do it, we'll keep doing what we've done in the past, and we'll continue to do the best we can.
All right. Thank you. The second question was, I know there was also motion of direction for to coordinate field workshops for the council relating to the new city hall, should that move forward. I noticed in the professional service agreement, task 1B, subsection A, site visit, it states architect will tour existing city halls and municipal courts with the client being the city manager. Our motion of direction involved the council touring existing facilities. So the question is, how does staff plan to accommodate the motion with the existing language of the professional services agreement?
The city's the client. It's not just the city manager. So.
Okay. And I got that from what I read on the top of the document.
I'm not following. The city is the client here, so we can include anybody we want to. It doesn't just have to be me.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Adams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I know I say cart before the horse. I support doing this this assessment. I just want everybody to remember this is the step just before we put to the ballot, and it's not actually making a decision to do the city hall, because that's not the decision that we make. And I think we're presenting it as such, we're making a decision to do a city hall. And I want to remind citizens that the decision is still yours. We're just going to be doing the due diligence of putting the right picture before you on whether you should do it or not. And I think that we need to make sure that's put out instead of speaking of an actual city hall, because we haven't, whether we support it or not, we haven't decided on that, and the citizens do. Because that kind of gives off a mixed message. Thanks.
Thank you. And also for the citizens that are watching or that may read about this, you still have the opportunity to come before the council and doing the citizen comments and share your concerns of why you are for it or you are against it before it even get to the ballot. And as someone stated, we work for you. We're here to support you and serve you. And some decisions are not made in the interest of the council, but it's made in the interest of what will happen in the future and where we need to move this city forward as we continue to grow. So I don't want you to leave here to think we don't hear you, because we do. But we also know that our city is continuing to grow. We need a new city hall. It's past due. Whether you're for it or against it, I can respect your opinion. Madam Secretary. Councilwoman Gonzalez.
So thank you for that, Madam Mayor. With the city staff, I just want to make sure that moving forward, just in an air of transparency, Councilmember Alvarez touched on something that's extremely important, and that's really important to me when we're explaining to our public as to why we need the city hall. We want to make sure that we're on the same page and that it's a clear and concise message. something that we need to be able to do is justify the why, right? So we understand that we're spending millions of dollars on this particular building, and we cannot use all of it, that there's some unsafe spaces here that's not a good fit, conducive with what we need for centralizing our services and our resources. But there's also a value add for doing the city hall, which is, to his point, putting these other buildings back on the tax roll. I'm curious to know how much that would be. So once we figure out what buildings would be removed potentially and consolidated into the city hall, I'd like for the citizens also to be made aware of what that would look like potentially back in our tax rolls if we did put those buildings up for sale, or what the potential could be for those buildings or future use for that. I just think that will help also make the case for the reason why we need to move forward with the city hall. Thank you.
Madam Secretary.
RS 23065, consider a memorandum resolution approving the appointment of an executive director of community development.
Thank you. Ms. Barr. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, City Council, City Mayor, and City Manager. The item before you is a recruitment and selection of an executive director for community development. I'm going to start with just a little bit of a history. On January the 13th, Leslie Hinkle, Executive Director of Community Development at the time, submitted her letter to retire effective March the 31st. On February the 13th, Human Resource posted the vacancy on the city's website and also on the Texas Municipal League's website. The city received 14 applications, and we narrowed the candidate down to 4, and interviews took place from February the 23rd through March the 2nd. And it was a panel of city leadership. The city manager selected Tiffany McNair as the Executive Director of Community Development. Let me tell you a little bit of background about Tiffany. Tiffany received her Master's of Study in Law from the University of Toledo. She also holds a Bachelor's of Science in Criminal Justice, also from the University of Toledo. She completed her MBA coursework from Tisch University. She graduated with pre-licensing real estate from Honduras College, and also graduated from the University of Toledo with a certificate in paralegal studies. Ms. McNair has over 13 years of experience serving in several nonprofit and public sector organizations, and most recently, she's serving as the Housing Commissioner with the City of Toledo, Ohio. She also has experience with affordable and tax credit housing development, underwriting, and management. She also has experience with community development block grants, home ARPA, the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, compliance and reporting. She also knows about Section 42, the low-income housing tax credit, housing management, compliance and development, real estate transactions, and educated and fair housing rules and regulations. Besides all her education, she also holds several certificates. She has a certificate for Housing Development Finance Professional Certification, Fair Housing Compliance and Specialist in Housing Credit Management from the Affordable Housing Management Association, Asset Management Specialization Certification and Certified Housing Asset Manager with Neighborhood Works, and Housing Credit Certified Professionals from the National Association of Home Builders. Your alternatives this evening are either to disapprove or approve the city manager's appointment of Tiffany McNair as the City of Killeen's Executive Director of Community Development, and staff recommends the approval of the city manager's appointment. Tiffany came to visit with us about 2 weeks ago. She is online. If we can get her online, there she is. She's online, so if you guys have any questions or if you want to ask her any questions, feel free to do that.
Thank you, Ms. Barr. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am. Would you like to share anything with us?
I really appreciate the City Council and yourself, Mayor, for allowing me this space and time to introduce myself to you. I am really excited and in a way overwhelmed with the opportunity to come to your city. While I was there, I brought my son, and my son has been with me throughout my career. And as we were driving down the different streets and visiting different neighborhoods, he just said, "Mom, to me, the city has a lot of potential, and I think you ought to come." So I am at peace with my decision. I've been in Toledo my whole life, so to move almost halfway across the country is big for me. But I feel like Killeen is definitely worth the investment of my work and my career and what I have to bring to the table. But I'm also very interested in learning a new way of approaching community development, housing development, different than what we've done here in Northwest Ohio. And I appreciate also Ms. Barker, Mr. Cagle, and Ms. Singh, who all welcomed me very graciously when I was in town a few weeks ago.
Thank you. Those are some kind words. We do have excellent leadership. We're proud of them, too. Mr. Councilmember Sagara.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, next week, I just want to kind of early welcome, and, we'll do everything we can to make sure that we provide a good quality of life, not just for you, but for your family and all that. So it's very important. So I just want to say, welcome to our city. But what I really wanted to say was congratulations to HR. I think this is the fastest we've ever, I think the retirement, she retired Friday, and we already have somebody here. So many congratulations to you. And it wasn't somebody that you just, appointed or it looks like she's got a very impressive resume. Yes. And so we're really impressed. And wouldn't that be nice if we can fill all our positions this quickly? So
Yes,
many
sir.
congratulations to you and all the staff that helped with this. Thank you.
Thank you for taking out the time from your busy schedule to speak to the council. And we are excited. We did lose Mrs. Hinkle. She did an excellent job. And we're looking forward to you taking us to the next level in our community development. And we have a lot of things for you to do. So you will never get tired of working. We have a lot of projects out there. So we are really excited. And thank you and your family for being a part of our family. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Park. Thank you. Madam Secretary.
OR 23008. Consider an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 6, Animals, amending feral cat, aggressive dogs, and wild animals.
Good evening, Ms. Singh. The floor is yours.
Good evening. So I'll talk to you a little bit about our Chapter 6 amendments.
Can you also, I apologize for cutting you off. We had a lot of questions. Can you also address those as we move forward?
Yes, ma'am. I'll try to kind of address those. A lot of those are in the presentation, and then I'll elaborate on some
Yes, ma'am.
things.
Thank
And then
you.
at the end, if there's anything I missed, y'all please let me know.
Yes, ma'am.
So this ordinance is 2 years in the making. So originally, the council had directed staff to go back and work with the committee in order to relook at what were then called our feral cat colony regulations. A subcommittee was formed, but several of the members resigned, and so we kind of started over in the process. So what we did, and this is our typical process for drafting any type of ordinance amendments, is that staff drafts the amendments, and then they present it to the committee. So whichever committee is involved with that ordinance, but in this case, the Animal Advisory Committee. So we talked to the committee about these ordinance amendments on January 12th and February 9th. They felt like they needed some more time to discuss them after January 12th, so that's why we continued to a second meeting. So our approach in rewriting this ordinance was essentially to simplify the governance of community cat colonies. So previously, there was many pages of regulations, requirements that were required to be submitted to even be able to be permitted to have a community cat colony. So what we did instead was say you have to manage these colonies responsibly, and as long as you're complying with that, you've completed education based to show that you know what that is, it essentially grants the permit. Now, if there's issues, there's still language in there. The colony managers have to keep records and all of that, so they have that information, but we're not going to ask for that unless there's an issue, as opposed to how it was previously. They had to provide all the vaccination records up front, and so it was a lot more paperwork on the colonies. Now, we still have the ability to enforce any nuisance issues, which is really the other side of the spectrum that we have to make sure we're addressing. So the committee recommended approval on most things with changes, and I'll kind of go over that piece by piece in the next slides. So these are the changes that the committee made and is in the draft that you have in front of you. We changed references from feral cats to community cats to kind of change the connotation that goes along with that. We also allow a community cat colony caregiver 30 days to address any unwanted presence of community cats on a neighboring property. We're no longer going to specifically prohibit colonies within a half mile of a school, church, or a playground. Instead, we're going to address these issues as nuisance issues. This makes sense because, there's even been talk some church may want to have a colony on their property, and this will no longer prohibit that. But if the cats are creating a nuisance, we still are able to address that. They also requested that there be an appeal process, and so instead of the Animal Services Director making the final call, those appeals would now come to me. And it also outlines how the community cats are treated at the shelter. So first of all, we would allow a community cat to be returned to a colony one time after it's impounded on an adjacent property, but we would place a microchip in the community cat so that it can be tracked for future use. There was a lot of conversation at the committee level about, potentially maybe that goes further in the future, but right now this is just kind of starting that microchipping process for community cats. And then it would allow a cat to be released at an alternate colony if it's not meeting the requirements to be returned to the original colony. So that's an important piece. I know there's a lot of talk tonight about the residential limits, which I'll get to here in a minute. But I think it seems like everybody's in agreement to everything except that point. But whenever we're talking about that residential limit, it's not don't do anything with the cats from that point on. It's let's rehome these to an alternative colony that's not in a residential area, because that's really where we're seeing the nuisance complaints. So I'll go into that a little bit more. So we did not reach a consensus on limiting the number of cats in a residential cat colony. So what that means is commercial cat colonies, we're not putting any limits on those numbers because those are typically bigger properties, right? So there's a little bit more room for the cats to roam before they become a nuisance. But what we're proposing is to put that limit of 6 cats in a residential colony, because we're talking about sometimes lots that are 60 foot wide, and currently we might have 20 cats. And while we call them community cats, because that's what they technically are, these are cats that are staying present all day, and they're defecating on their neighbors' properties. They're causing all kinds of damage to the effect that people can't enjoy their yards. And so we have had a stay on this ordinance for the past 2 years, so we haven't been enforcing these issues. But I know the council has gotten multiple complaints over that time, and so has staff. And so once that stay is up, we have to enforce that. And so our thought on putting this limit of 6 cats on that is to try to reduce the fact that we have to go in and enforce this. So if we can reduce the numbers of cats in some of those colonies that are creating issues, it's less likely that we're going to have to go in and seize the whole colony, because that's what we're looking at. Some of these situations, I would consider that they're cat hoarding. They're not cat colonies. And a lot of our conversation at the committee when we were talking about these issues, there was a lot of comments about how that is not responsible cat colony caregivers, and we would completely agree. But again, it's still classified as that. So this is staff's way of trying to put a limit on it, so maybe it's more enforceable, and so we don't have to go in and seize the entire colonies that are causing havoc on their neighbor's property. Then we have a couple administrative amendments. So for the aggressive dog portion of the ordinance, this is just a change in our compliance timeline so that we're in accordance with some state law changes. And then for wild animals, we need to clarify that it's unlawful to breed wild animals within the city limits. Previously, it just stated that you couldn't have wild animals, and so this is just a little bit more specific that we felt like we needed to have in the ordinance. Oh, I'm sorry. There we go. So your alternatives tonight are to not approve the amendments to the ordinance. You can make changes to the proposed amendments to the ordinance. So remember, we did draft it with that limit of 6 cats in a residential cat colony. Whenever the committee voted, it was a split vote 3-3, and so that's why we've left it in there. But we told the committee we would let the council know that this was still an issue of contention. I don't believe there's any other issues with the ordinance. I think it's limited to that 6 on the residential area, or you can approve the ordinance as written. And staff is recommending that you approve it as written. But again, the committee had a split vote on that, so there's no definitive recommendation on that specific residential cat colony requirement. So if you did want to go forward with the rest of it, that of course would be an option as well.
Thank you so much. And when the committee decided on the number 6, was that, how did, when it comes to the number 6, when the committee discussed the number 6, someone said that that's not scientific data. How did that number even come up?
So what I did is I looked at so many city ordinances dealing with this issue. It's not common to specifically talk about the number of residential cat colony limits like we're doing. I did find one city that is enforcing that, and their number was 6. The reason that we're putting it in there is because we in Killeen have a specific problem we're trying to respond to. So that's where that number came from. But could it be 4? Could it be 8? Yes. The problem is that higher that number gets, the more nuisance issues you're going to have, and the more likely we're going to have to go in there and remove the entire colony.
So from your opinion, from the number 6, anything more would be a problem for the city? Or you can control it better if it's 6? Because someone also made the statement, I'm just trying to get clarity, that you cannot stop kittens from growing. They're gonna grow, multiply. So how do you control that?
So we still want to be enforcing the trap, neuter, vaccinate, and release part of it, right? But what we want to do is work with these cat colony caregivers to potentially rehome additional cats above that 6 into a more appropriate area, right? So maybe it goes into a commercial cat colony. There is a benefit to businesses, and we've had businesses request these kind of, if they've got a large warehouse, cats definitely will help with any rodent problems and whatnot. So it's more of managing the colonies overall, and hopefully we could work together to make that happen.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Adams and then Councilmember Sagara.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. What was the veterinarian's take on the number?
So the split vote was 3 and 3, and the 3 voting in favor of leaving that in there was Dr. Joyner, Jessica Green, and myself.
Okay. Can animal services handle the increase of nuisance if we cut it? Would there become a nuisance issue when we take it to 6? Because right now it's no number. Can animal services handle that?
We are currently full, and we stay full, right? This is a nationwide issue. Our thought on limiting it to 6 was that potentially we could keep from seizing those remaining 6. Whereas right now, if we leave it as it is, our concern is we're going to get that nuisance call as soon as this ordinance goes back into effect, and we're going to seize the entire colony.
Okay, so I'll make sure it's clear. So the other ordinance, we're just not enforcing it right now.
Yes, sir.
So we're doing this to make sure we don't create additional nuisance issues.
Correct.
And just so for clarity, because I know that TNVR was an issue, we're not euthanizing any of the cats unless
we do euthanize. I mean, we have to at our shelter because we're over capacity very often. The hope with this, if we have colony caregivers that are willing to work with us and willing to take cats that we have and home them into a colony, we're absolutely willing to work with them on that, and we hope we can include that in the future.
Okay, because even if it wasn't 6, you would still be able to do that as well. And I understand that if you don't use 6, that means if you have 20 and they become a nuisance, then they're a nuisance.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see both sides, and I appreciate you presenting both the pro and the cons to it. I also, I see the importance of the advisory committee. Would it be an issue if we tabled that portion so that, because I really would like the committee to come to a consensus, because that's what we have them there for, as an advisory committee. I know the next regular meeting is this month. What kind of hassle would that create if we did that?
So I would recommend, even if you take out that 6 residential limit, I would still recommend you adopt the ordinance with the rest of it in it, because I have not heard any comments tonight that indicate anybody has any issues with the other part of the regulations. I don't think that we can come to a consensus, simply because we discussed it for a long time in depth, and I think we respectfully disagreed on it. We both, everyone involved, I think, saw both sides of the stories. They, some of the committee members that were here tonight, I think, understood that we've got an issue we're trying to address. From our perspective, we think this is the best way to address it. Ultimately, it's the council's decision. If that part is removed, we're going to do the best we can to still resolve issues. But regardless, again, with the ordinance that you haven't been enforcing for 2 years, there's going to be a backlog in it. So there is going to be a large enforcement at some point.
Yeah, I think I do share the concern of euthanization, but I also have I got the emails about the concerns with a bunch of cats, and I got them on the other side. People are trying to take my cats, so this is a interesting issue. So I'll that's all I have for now. May have some other questions later.
Thank you, Mayor. No, you answered quite a bit, because I just want to be clear, because anything over 6, they were saying we automatically euthanize, but from what I'm hearing is, and is this correct, we have caregivers, right? We're going to allow our caregivers to come in and say, hey, before we euthanize them, you can either start another cat colony or take care of them. And I think from what I heard from you guys is that's what you guys wanted, some kind of caregiver, because I heard caregiver and I wrote it down. And so we want to make sure that we're giving you an opportunity to make sure that they are not euthanizing it. From our perspective, and like I kept saying, there's two sides to everything, and, we all love animals, and we also need to figure out how do we police this. We can't just let it go wild. So, the best thing to do is figure out, okay, how do we compromise on this? I don't know much. I know I've toured the different cat colonies many years ago when Mr. Fox was around, and I had a little bit of understanding. And one of the questions, because we'd go around and I'd see a couple of cats come, and I would ask them, how do you know how big a colony is? I could never figure that out. The experts do. Yeah, but how do we, as a city, how do we know there's more than 6 in there?
So the situations we're trying to address, while they technically become a cat colony by definition, it's really cat hoarding situations. And so we have video from the neighbors next door making complaints where you can see 20 cats in the video just staying there, right? So that it's pretty easy to enforce that. We have a lot of responsible colony caregivers that are doing great work, but we've got these other situations we need to address.
No, and that's it right there, because I understand these people, you guys are very responsible, you guys are caring, but at the same time, 20 cats and nobody taking care of it with citizens complaining, those are things that we have to make sure we take care of. So, I think that there can be some kind of compromise, and, we rely on you to step up too. And so that's the big thing, is just kind of figuring out how we can work together on this. So, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So there were some questions about the process, right? So for me, this is a question that I have. So tracking the reduction, and then you mentioned rehoming them. What is the process for that? So we've got the colonies. What does that process look like for someone who does not know?
So this really simplifies it. So this is a very simple application, less focused on regulating the colonies, right? Because we're putting that be a responsible caregiver, and we're good. But we want to know where the colonies are, right? Because when we seize a cat, or if somebody traps a cat, we need to know where to return it. So it's more focused on that piece of it. As long as I've been here, I've never heard a single complaint on our commercial colonies. That it just doesn't happen. It's where they're in residential areas on those small lots, densely populated areas, and so that's where we'll see the regulation have to come into play.
Okay. According to Pet Place and Texas Veterinarians Association, on the colonies, the size, they say they vary greatly, right? So it's kind of this very broad spectrum. It says as little as 2 cats to as many as 15, and then to your point, anything over that is really considered hoarding, and that does create a lot of other issues. So my question is, because we couldn't come to a consensus on 6, why would we not settle on 10? as that's a middle ground number. And then that offers the opportunity for those folks to start working on rehoming them after they've been brought in and they've been, gone through that process. Why not just focus on that 10? Why not settle on that middle number as a balance to resolve this whole issue?
I don't know that anybody would be okay with 10, right? I think people would be more okay with 10 than they are with 6. The problem is that if you have 6 and it's creating a nuisance, we still have to go in and seize those 6 cats, right? The 6 number is more intended to prevent there from becoming a nuisance. So if we go all the way up to 10 and all of a sudden you're living next to one of these colonies and you've got 10 cats defecating on your patio furniture in your driveway, it's more likely to become an issue. So I think the more number of cats you have, the more likely it's going to be an issue. 6 may be too much. I mean, that may still create those nuisance issues, but and talking with the director on it, we felt like that was maybe a number that could potentially be less likely to draw complaints.
So to their point, and because we've got this ordinance that's kind of been on hiatus for a while, and we then go ahead and say, let's stick with 6 and we move forward. There was a question or statement of unintended circumstances. So what happens to that? What does that look like for the abundance of animals that might already be out there, that they're in the process of either rehoming or getting them through the process? What does that look like? Are we going in a broad sweep and taking them away, or is there a phase into this, or what does this process look like for these cat lovers?
So once there's no longer a stay on the ordinance, we are not going to go in and address all of the complaints we've had over the past 2 years, right? We would, because some of those may have been resolved on their own, we would wait for new complaints, right? But once people that have had this problem going on for 2 years, we expect that we'll get calls. How quickly, we don't know. But the colony caregivers would be given, I believe it's 30 days to just register their colonies. And we hope that they would work with us to let us know, hey, we've got places we could place cats if y'all do have to seize them or if they come into your possession.
And then lastly, the people that are responsible for the colony, that register that colony, are they also responsible for the rehoming process? Are they taking on that responsibility as well?
It depends on the situation, right? If the city has the cat, then no, the colony caregivers don't have any responsibility. We hope that they would let us know if they've got a placement for it, and we can work well with them on that. If they're doing it on their own of moving it to a different colony, the city may never be involved in that.
Understood.
So it's more of a cooperation.
Yes, ma'am.
Hopefully.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, our guests tonight. I'm going to tread very lightly because I know whether it's children or whether it's animals or whatever, when you love something, that is simply what you love. I do like the TNR program, that we do take care of our animals in that manner so that these colonies are not getting big. Now, what I'm not understanding, why would you want more than 6 cats in your home? And all the things that you have to do. I understand the colonizing. I understand what you're doing. Can we have something similar to CPS go out to the houses? Do we have everyone register who have these cats? And that we check the houses, that we check what's going on, and when the standards are not met, then we take those cats away?
So
there's some questioning here, whether, for me, and it's the responsibility when we start getting more than 6. I know that we get these cats, and as long as there are food sources and persons who can control their cat population and they can take care of them, that it's okay. But I'm hearing something kind of difficult here for me. Are our apartments and our homes and our renters and our places where we're having our cats, is there any requirements for them? So talk about the requirements to having, because, we just can't go out there and just move everybody in.
Yes, ma'am. So your analogy actually is spot on. So our Animal Services Department takes on that role, like you compared to CPS, of making sure that animals are being treated humanely and have the, access to food, clean water, all of that kind of stuff. And so one thing to clarify, these, the cats that we're talking about limiting are not cats in the home. Right now, we don't have any limit on the number of cats that you can have on your home, in your home, as long as you can responsibly care for it. What we're talking about limiting is cats outdoors that are bothering your neighbors, because if your cats are outdoors and you've got a large number of them, they're not staying on your property, right? It's not the same thing as dogs where they're much more easily contained. They're going onto your neighbor's property, and so that's where we're getting the issues.
So in respect to what you just said, is there a fee, or if the animal control catches that cat out, then the cat goes where?
So a lot of
Take
times.
it back to, are they chipped?
So a lot of times what will actually happen is that a adjacent property owner will rent a humane trap from the city, and they'll be able to capture the community cat, then they'll bring it to the city, right? And then that would, if nobody picks it up, it becomes the property of the city. And so we are out enforcing those regulations, making sure that they meet our nuisance standards. We have all of that in place. This is just kind of one additional measure before we get to that point, hopefully.
And I guess we would not be discussing it if this was not a problem.
Yes, ma'am.
So it's a problem. It's a problem with the number, it's the problem with the control, and it is up to those owners to ensure that that happens. And when it does not happen, we have a problem. And so the problem is that when they're out and about and they get caught, then they will go and serve the time, and owners come and get them, pay the fee, and go back. Shouldn't we put a limitation on how many times a cat is out and it's found or it's captured? So do we do that?
Yes, ma'am. So with this new ordinance, we would allow a cat to be returned to a colony one time if it's been captured on an adjacent property and that property owner is declaring that it's unwanted on their property. At that point, and I think I missed answering this for you earlier, at that point, we would microchip them. Other than that, we don't have a requirement to microchip these community cats.
So what I'm hearing, and maybe I'm a little off here, you have a rule. We know what's going on. We want to bring other cats into the home with the cats that we have and have this mass colony of cats. And should we be able to do that? I just don't, I think more than 6 cats would just be a lot. Just a lot. So I'm not in agreement to the 6 cats. I know I'm treading lightly because I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings in reference to animals that they love. But at the same time, I want to be respectful of our neighborhood and our neighbors and those persons that are there and how we can do that. The only thing that I've heard that I agree with the things that you've said tonight, Mrs. Singh, I do. And I agree with some of the things that our audience has said, but I think it's all respect thing. We're going to have to just follow the rules, keep a limited number of cats, and when they don't follow the law, then we're going to have to put something there for them to do. That's just clear. That's straight and clear. We're going to be talking about cats all night. If we keep, it's nothing wrong with that.
Point of order.
But we've got to make sure that we're following
We
the law.
cannot have signs in here, sir. And
It's
residents,
nothing.
when the council is speaking, we have to respect them and let them finish.
There is nothing wrong with having your animals and your cats. But if they start causing distractions and the laws and the rules are being broken, then there's a problem. The only thing that I can agree with everyone on tonight is TNR. I see my gavel coming. The TNR, I think that is a wonderful program, and I do agree with the limited amount of 6 cats per household.
Community colony, it's outside.
Community colonies, okay. Because I've read some things on it, and I think 6 is the number, and if we do great with that 6, then we come back and we look at that ordinance again. We have to take small steps with some things and see how it works out. If it works well, then we go back and we revisit. But we have to give it a chance before we just simply say, we're gonna have a colony of cats. We're gonna do all these things. Let's try simple steps. Ensure that the programs work and gradually increase to more when we see that the program is working. Mayor, I'm finished.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I just have 2 quick questions. Is there a benefit to changing the reference from feral cats to community cats? And why is that important, just from my own understanding?
So when you say feral cats, right, it's got a certain connotation. Some of these cats are not wild at all, right? They're, as you've heard tonight, some of them were domesticated cats that have been dumped. And so by calling them community cats, it talks a little bit more about the benefit that they serve for the community, the rodent control and things like that. So it's really just changing the narrative about it.
Thank you. The other question, and I understand the committee kind of came to a medium with some of these amendments, but just in your opinion, did any of the recommendations for amendment negatively affect the quality of life for our residents?
No, sir, I don't believe so. We still have our nuisance ordinances that we'll be able to enforce, but I think the changes that the committee made that are incorporated are very positive.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms. Singh, so whether this passed with the number or not, let's say we pass it with 6, does that mean the Gestapo is gonna go out and grab the other cats?
No, sir. First of all, there is a 30-day period of which we would ask all colonies to register with the city. As with any of our animal ordinances, we respond to complaints, right? We don't proactively go and knock on anybody's door or, if we see a stray animal running around, sure, we'll address that. But this is based on complaints. And so
Okay.
unless we get the complaint, it would not be something we would be enforcing.
And I like the idea of the community getting involved, and I know we have community caregivers. How is that program working? Are we recruiting more? So we can just, let's say it is 6, and you find, and you can catch, when you catch them, you tag them. Because I'm really trying to find ways not to euthanize them. And we can send them to these other places. Are we actively recruiting new across the city?
The city sometimes struggles with stuff like that, right? We're short-staffed, they're being pulled in every direction, and animal services is no exception to that role. So we would hope that some of our community cat colony caregivers would recruit others to the program, would set up colonies on properties that want it, right? Because we heard a little bit tonight about some of the commercial colonies that are out there that they're managing for business owners that maybe need cats there but don't necessarily want to manage it.
And that's where I'll ask some of the advisory committee you can help us out with. If you know other folks, let's get them involved so we can make this a joint thing. So I know we handle, these numbers don't, I know this ordinance don't affect Fort Hood because that's a separate.
Correct.
But we're not storing any of the, we're not maintaining any of the cats captured on Fort Hood with our numbers.
We track those numbers separately.
Okay. And then, so if I know there's been discussions about a new facility, would that decrease the likelihood of having to euthanize?
It would definitely up our capacity, right? But in some ways, that capacity can get filled up one time, right? I mean, we maintain a larger capacity, but if we're constantly full, it's more of a equation of animals in, animals out, right? And so we still got to up our adoption numbers in order to really reduce that rate. But of course, initially it would.
Okay, and the last question I have, I see that you're proposing that the appeal process comes to you. So that still gives some people some leeway when it comes to whatever number we set. It gives them some leeway from, could you explain what criteria you would use?
Yes, and so the committee specifically recommended that it go through me since I do supervise the animal shelter through the director. It would not circumvent any of the rules written in there, so that's number of 6 cats, if adopted, that would be in there. That's not something I have the authority to
Right.
go against once it's ordinance. It more has to be if there's a question about whether a cat colony caregiver is complying, they would have the opportunity to come to me and present their evidence, and so that it's not just one single person making the decision. It takes a little bit of the burden off of the director that she's not the final say in it, that they would have that opportunity to come talk to me about any of her decisions.
Okay, thank you.
And in all fairness to the residents that are not here tonight, to the individuals that do send us emails all the time, this council is more than probably 40 to 50 people that's within this resident that's been sent emails in the last, I can only speak for my email because I have 2 email accounts, over the last 3 or 4 months that people either call or they got concerned. So we, the council, know that we receive those emails, and we tell the residents that we'll work together to come up with a solution. We're not going to always agree. If it's half and half, some going to agree with it, some are not going to agree with it. I don't want any animal. I don't have one personally, but I keep my daughter dog, and I know how much I love him. But in the same token, I'm responsible if I take in any more dogs and have them outside my house or have a community dog colony or whatever it might be. I take on that ownership. I take on that responsibility. And it's unfortunate that there are some owners that really follow the ordinance, really do the right thing. But we cannot forget the residents. We would never have gotten to this point. But they are sending us email and telling us that we have to protect their rights as well as the right of an animal. So how do you balance that out? You got to look at the majority and how this will affect our city moving forward. And if there was some kind of system where we could work with other cities, and if they needed someone that may wanted cats, that we can come up with a solution outside of Killeen, because we're going to continue to grow. And we have no way to control the growth. And I really want us to look at it from a council perspective for what's good for all of the residents that we represent, not just tonight, but moving forward. Mr. Cagle.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to defend our employees a minute. I've heard for the 3.5 years I've been here that we have a group of employees that enjoy and want to maximize the number of euthanizations, and that it's terrible. It's a disgusting thing to say. It's one of the most difficult jobs in the city to have to do that, and there is not one person that enjoys it. In fact, we have to be very careful not to put too much burden on an employee, because it has a huge mental impact on them. And I guess you have to ask yourself why we have animal control. It's because people, all of us, human beings, are irresponsible, and the animals suffer. And the people that have to do this suffer too. So I just hope that people would understand there is no one that works for this city that enjoys doing that, and they would prefer that it never happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Singh. Thank you.
Public hearings. PH 23018. Hold a public hearing and consider an ordinance requested by Vernon Hood, case number Z23-04, to rezone lots 24 through 29, Block 3, Western Oaks, from UD University District to UD University District with a conditional use permit, CUP, to allow single-family residential use on 6 existing lots. The property is locally addressed as 505 Reese Creek, Killeen, Texas.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The public hearing will be held on April 11, 2023, on items 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Council, you have 2 times to speak for 5 minutes. Mr. Revelle, good evening, sir.
Also, and to the city manager, the case in front of you today will be to rezone property that is currently within the University District to University District with a conditional use permit. The property is located at 505 Reese Creek, and is basically the CUP or conditional use permit will allow single-family residential use for the 6 existing lots. The star on the map shows the approximate location for the 6 lots. The aerial shows the 6 lots, and as you can see, in this area, the properties to the west are actually single-family homes, and so that's pretty much in the character in this area of single-family homes where this request is being made. The subject property, as we said, is currently zoned University District. The 6 residential lots were part of the Western Oaks subdivision back in 1972, so they've been platted since 1972. In accordance with our ordinance, single-family dwellings are not allowed by right, and therefore, that's why this will be before the council for that decision. If approved, the applicant intends to build a 1,400 square foot single-family home on one of the existing lots. And actually, in this picture here, that lot with a structure on it is a mobile home that was there previously. This property owner bought the property back in December of 2021, and it's our understanding that they intend to put that, if this is granted, that 1,400 square foot home on that lot. As we said, the conditional use permit, the council can grant that within the University Overlay District, and in granting that conditional use permit, you can impose conditions and safeguards to ensure that what is developed remains compatible with the University District. Subject property, in terms of the comp plan, as mentioned earlier by one of the residents, is part of the residential mix. Also, information pertaining to the development zone that it's within, and the land use mix and the zoning district mix, and you see the numbers, so I won't say them here. A large portion of the property is located in the flood hazard area. As you can see, at least about 2.5 of those 6 lots are affected by floodplain. So that's going to affect overall development of these 6 lots. But again, the request is to build a 1,400 square foot, eventually, hopefully, build a 1,400 square foot home on that central lot. This is a view of the subject property looking north. View of Reese Creek looking east. All proper notification has occurred. To date, we haven't received any written responses regarding this request. Council has 2 alternatives: disapprove or approve the applicant's CUP request. Staff is recommending, or will be recommending as a part of this, that the applicant be allowed to be granted this conditional use permit to allow the 6 single-family dwellings on basically one on each of the 6 platted lots. This case was heard by the Planning and Zoning Commission on March the 6th, and by a vote of 7-0, they voted to recommend approval of the applicant's request.
Thank you, Mr. Revelle. Mr. Revelle had one question. Why did staff agree to build in the University District? Why?
Okay, so in this particular instance, these are 6 existing platted lots that were in place since 1972. The University Overlay District was put in place, I believe, around 2012, 2013. So, and if you'll notice, along that stretch of road for Reese Creek to the west, as I pointed out, there are a number of single-family homes or residential homes there. So to allow this is not outside of character what's already in the area. We agree that the intent of the overlay district was to protect the university, but also there was an allowance made for a conditional use permit because they understood in developing that you would have cases like this.
Thank you, because you're going to get that question probably in another form, but thank you. That was an excellent explanation. Councilmember Boyd.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm actually going to piggyback off of the mayor on this one. So, you know, this area is located in my district, and I may just be the only one not moved by the request. My concern is moving out of alignment with the pre-established university district. The university district provides for development which complements the presence of a growing university. Specifically, the subject property is located directly across from the university's main entrance, where perhaps multifamily housing would actually be a more efficient and relatable use of the land. And for that reason, I'm likely not going to be able to support this. But I did have a question relating to the floodplain. What type of construction would be prohibited in that special flood plain area?
So typically, and I would need to look at the details of this one, but typically in a floodplain, you have what's called a floodway, and that's the area that's completely reserved for high flood waters, and that's typically considered to be the no-bill zone. And then you have an area that's called basically the floodplain fringe, which is outside of the floodway, where development can happen, but it typically has to be done with protection. So the ground has to be elevated, or the structure has to be elevated, such as to lessen the flood hazard. So in this particular case here, let's assume that it's floodplain, development would be allowed, but there would be certain restrictions that would have to be met in that case. And then in the cases where that area that's close to the creek that has to be reserved for high-speed flood, what is called the floodway, no development would be allowed. In this case here, where we're talking about that structure going, it appears to be, it appears that it would be located completely outside of the floodplain.
Understood. It's kind of like the comprehensive plan. I know that's just a guiding document, but moving away from it makes me a little bit uncomfortable. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, Mr. K, Mr. Rivera, real quick to Councilmember Boyd. You said there was an exception to the rule, even though we have the University District overlay. And the staff, we want to develop in that area, correct? We do want to develop. I can see commercial, I can see the university getting bigger and more students come and they expand. And you do want to have that area to build like apartments for a college student. But even with that being said, why do you still believe that it's a good investment for the city to build the 6 homes there in that area?
Well, number one, the lots are already plotted for this kind of use. If you wanted to do some of the other uses that we're suggesting, there may have to be some changes made in order to allow for that go beyond just a zoning request.
Right, but I guess I'm saying with the homes being there, it's not going to take away from the future growth and what the future council might want to do with apartments, townhomes.
No, I don't anticipate that it would take away from that. You're right, Councilman Board, that the district does speak about B2 uses. It does speak about the possibility of mixed uses. But in the overlay district language, it also does allow for cases like this with the conditional use permit.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Alvarez.
Thank you, Mayor. I share the sentiments that Councilmember Boyd had, although I did drive by this property prior to this meeting tonight, and that really helped me understand staff's recommendation on this. This property is hindered not only by the 100-year floodplain, but the topography of the property doesn't lend itself to commercial development or anything else. And the fact that the property owner legally subdivided and platted the property into the 6 lots in 1972, I believe he has some sort of vesting rights as far as the use goes. I'm not an attorney, I would defer to the city attorney on that, but looking at the property itself, and I would love to see more commercial growth in that corridor, in the University District, period. But if you drive by that property, when you look at the amount of area that's subtracted by the FEMA 100-year floodplain, and you look at the topography as you go towards the top right of that aerial, I wouldn't know of a commercial developer that would want to touch that. For Councilmember Boyd talked about developing in a floodplain. If there were to do that, it would require either floodproofing or elevating the structure, both which are ridiculously expensive to do, especially for commercial development. So because of that, I'm fine with the owner's request. And I think maybe a middle ground, if there is some concern, is to allow him to build the structure he wants on one of the lots or maybe 2 of the lots. I wouldn't be a fan of seeing anything in that floodplain area. I don't think that the homeowner would probably think it's feasible once he evaluated how much it would cost him to do it. assuming he could overcome all the permitting requirements that go along with it. But anyways, thank you for your presentation and the recommendation.
Madam Secretary, next item.
PH 23019, hold a public hearing and consider an ordinance approving a written service agreement and the annexation of approximately 221.272 acres of land lying contiguous to the existing city limits, generally located on the west side of Bunny Trail, north of the Goodnight Ranch subdivision, south of Haynes Elementary School, and east of Dr. Joseph A. Fowler Elementary School, Killeen, Texas.
Mr. Revelle, before we move forward, did you have anything to say about PH-23-018 before we move forward? Did you have any more comments on the last item?
Oh, no, ma'am.
Okay.
No, ma'am. Thank
Mr. Revelle.
Yes, ma'am. This item is a voluntary annexation petition that includes a written service agreement as well as for the annexation of 221 acres of property that's generally located west of Bunny Trail, north of Goodnight Ranch subdivision, and south of Haynes Elementary School and east of Joseph A. Fowler School. And I've got the aerial on that shortly. On January the 4th, staff received this petition. As we mentioned, it's generally located west of Bunny Trail and south of Haynes Elementary School. The star on the map shows the the actual location. And this shows a closer view of the location. I do want to note two things on this. As we mentioned, the overall acreage is 221 acres. There is a piece, there's a piece that's noted on the map here, and that is outside of this annexation request. And then there's also, and it's hard to see here, but you can see a difference between the black line and the green dotted line. And that difference represents about a 15-foot easement that's not included within this annexation request from the property owner. There's work still being done to determine exact ownership, but that 15-foot easement is not included in this request. And again, this is, you can see it a little bit more clearly. Let me see. There we go. You can see it a little bit more clearly here. What we're saying, it's just a portion that's out there that's part of that 15-foot easement. So in accordance with the voluntary annexation process, everything has been met in terms of the service agreement and the schedules for providing service. All of that information is provided in the written service agreement that you have in front of you. In addition, the council has to conduct a public hearing, and next week you will be able to fulfill that responsibility, and notification has to be done, and we have accomplished that responsibility. And that's really what this is sharing. Again, at the end of the public hearing on next week, the council could actually adopt the annexation ordinance. So the council has two alternatives: disapprove the written service agreement and the annexation ordinance, or approve both. And staff is recommending the approval of the service agreement and the annexation ordinance, hopefully on next week.
Thank you, Mr. Revelle. Madam Secretary, we can move to the next item.
Madam Mayor, I believe Councilmember Boyd had clicked on.
Oh, I'm
to speak.
sorry, it didn't it didn't come up on mine. Councilmember Boyd.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This first question for Mr. Revelle is on slide 5, that little piece that states outside of the city limits, is that where a tower is located?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's my understanding that the property owner that's requesting this annexation actually owns that property, but there is a tower that's being leased.
Got it.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you for that. The other two questions I had are actually for the fire department and the police department concerning growth.
Yes, sir.
So I'll just go ahead and ask the question for the fire department first. In reference to the municipal services agreement, which we have in front of us, relating to the fire department, I understand the response area is for Fire Station 9. But my question is, does the growth, along Bunny Trail suggest the need for expansion at the existing fire station or for a new fire station in the future to accommodate the growth that's going on in West Killeen?
So specifically to that area, the answer right now would be no. However, we have in our master plan a Station 10 rough area location of 195 and Clear Creek. And again, that's a rough area. So the new Station 4 will be assisting Station 9 currently as growth goes out and continues to go in that area of Bunny Trail and again, that surrounding area by Texas A&M for just visual purposes. We do have slated in the master plan the addition of a Station 10.
Okay, very good. And it's just a consideration of all the developments that have been approved, and a lot of commercial retail that's coming up along West Anschluter, Clear Creek. We're really growing out there. The next question I had was actually for the police department, and thank you, Chief, for that information. And this is a similar question for the police department. With the continued growth, what preliminary plans do we have to establish a presence or a precinct in the west side of Killeen?
To establish a precinct, that is actually not in our plan, per se. That is a serious staffing issue. Our biggest concern right now is getting our staffing numbers up to fill our vacancies. Once we get to that point, we can talk about deploying them in other areas. But right now, there are no plans for expanding precincts, a brick and mortar footprint, if you will, in West Killeen.
Okay, thank you for that information. It is my thinking that with the growth that we're seeing that's happening across West Killeen, fastest growing area of the entire city, that we are looking at how to establish a police presence, some form, even if it's a part of a future building or something, considering the growth on that side of town. So, and I understand we have the staffing needs, working on that. That's an issue with recruiting, but I'm hoping that, those are discussions that are being had in the near future.
Absolutely. We're certainly open to that prospect. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Cagle.
Just to address that question a bit, and I don't mind Chief Gerhart coming up and contradicting me, but the term precinct, substation, those things are really out of date today. Those are places officers used to go when they had to handwrite reports, fill out forms. It's all, their car is the substation today. And if you create a police building, it's something that people expect police are going to be there 24 hours a day, and then you've got to staff it. You've got to have clerical people there. And if you think about it, when a building's open 24 hours a day, that takes about 5 or 6 people to staff it every hour of every day for the year. So it's a lot of overhead you're adding, and you don't get a lot of bang for the buck. So I think the police, the way you get more police presence in areas is just adding more officers.
And I'm asking because, I'm actually asking on behalf of the citizens that live there, right? And their thing is, we need some type of location where we can access the police. I know I had a discussion some time back with the chief, just as a suggestion or an idea of taking Fire Station 9 and punching out a piece of it where a community center was supposed to originally be built onto the building.
Yeah.
And adding an area for the police department to have a base, if you will. To have one officer in there to reference and things like that. But it comes down to presence. I know we have, the car is the precinct, if you will. I'm using the old term. But if residents aren't seeing that vehicle, the same conversation we always have, there's a lack of an idea that there is a presence. So my hope is that we determine to across the city, not just West Killeen, work to establish a location for the police to kind of be based at, as well as the headquarters that we have. I know it's a costly thing, but we're going to grow, and I think that will be a benefit to our citizens and to the city as a whole.
And as we continue to grow, how we got on this subject, because we're a public hearing, is we just have to really focus on the budget and do right by all residents of the city of Killeen. With that being said, Madam Secretary.
PH 23020. Hold a public hearing and consider an ordinance requested by Belton Engineering Incorporated on behalf of Bunny Trail Real Estate LP, case number Z22-59, for the initial rezoning of approximately 221.272 acres of land out of the John E. Madera Survey, abstract number 600, from A, Agricultural District, to Plan Unit Development, PUD, with SF2, Single Family Residential District, to R3A, Multifamily Residential District, RT1, Residential Townhouse Single Family District, and NBD Neighborhood Business District uses. The properties are locally addressed as 6603 Bunny Trail, Killeen, Texas.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Welcome back, Mr. Revere.
Thank you, Mayor and Council and City Manager. This item on next week will be a companion item to the annexation. So if the annexation moves forward, the initial zoning for this property would be agriculture, and the request would be to rezone to this planned unit development that will include single-family residential, multifamily residential, residential townhouse, single-family, and neighborhood business district uses. The star on the map shows the location. Again, this is the aerial of the location. Some more details here. If approved, the applicant intends to develop the property as a mixed-use community with single-family dwellings, apartments, townhomes, commercial uses, and open space, and the acreage is provided as listed on the slides. The proposed number of dwelling units for each one is listed there, 300 units for the single-family residential, 800 for multifamily, total of 1,700 units across all the residential uses. And then, as you see, a possible estimated population at full build out of about 71. Just really showing you the layout and the mix of uses on this map here. A couple of things, several things to point out. There would be a construction of a major roadway from the west to the east, basically extending Mohawk Drive. That would be at the expense of the developer. I think that something was mentioned about that in doing citizens' comments. In addition to that, there would be a north-south on Bridgewood Drive for more connections there. And you can imagine, just by putting those two roadways in, you open up a lot of mobility and ability to move through here, or through here and there, or from here to, the movement of traffic flow opens up significantly just with those. And then, of course, all of these arrows along the way back and forth are really showing other internal roadway connections. And then I also want to point out here, there's some more access that will open up in regard to roadway layout. In regard to the parkland, as shown on the map, about 10 acres is associated with parkland. So you've got something to the north there, parkland here, and then also the parkland there. I do want to note with the parkland here, if you will notice, and let me clear this up, that is the Bunny Trail Hill or Macmillan Mountain. And so this is really showing a connection that would be provided there as well. And that may alleviate some of the concerns that's happening here now when people are parking here and accessing it. This will be an opportunity for access that way. And then also, as mentioned, the mixed uses. So if you will notice, your single-family townhomes as well as your single-family residential are at the edges of the property that connect to residential property to the south and residential property to the north. And then a lot of your multifamily intense density is interior to the property. And then also you've got your commercial there. And basically, I've said a number of these things, but these are all the elements associated with the planned unit development. So a lot of positives there. And then to expand upon the open space and the park space, there will be a greenway trail. There will be a 12-foot concrete trail there that will comport with the park master plan. As I mentioned before, the Bunny Hill Mountain or Macmillan Mountain, there will be a connection there. That connection will actually be a 35-foot buffer that has a 5-foot sidewalk. So there is real connection, real connection for pedestrians. There'll also be playscapes, pavilion, and then the accessories associated with parks. In addition, this gives you a good feel for what these townhomes could look like. There are two major types, those that are alley loaded as well as those that are front loaded. Obviously, the alley loaded will have the parking in the rear, and the front loaded will have the parking in the front. And these are depicting those two things for the residential townhouses. And then possible products for the multifamily units are shown here. And then in addition, just to show, again, comportment with the 2022 thoroughfare plan, again, this will be built here, this will be built here. The trail that we talked about in green, the 12-foot concrete trail will be built there, which is a part of the overall master plan. And then there'll be interior roads and, as we said, connections here. For the extent, the east-west extent, this is showing a cross-section of what that would look like. Please note that that will basically have two travel lanes on either side of a center turning lane. And then there also will be opportunity for future build-out that will be there with two additional lanes on either side, as well as future bike lanes, street trees that will be a part of the development, and the sidewalks that would be a part of the development as well. And then for the north-south collector, that's showing the layout for how that would look. And then for the townhomes, well, just for the local street sections themselves, interior, the left slide shows that. And then for the alley-loaded townhomes where the parking is in the rear, the right slide shows what that will look like. 27-foot wide paved surface for the alley-loaded townhome street section, and 30-foot paved surface for just local streets. Comp plan information, traditional neighborhood. There's a portion that's neighborhood commercial, shows you the mixes there, shows you the mix within the development zone, and you've already seen this with the previous presentation, so I won't belabor this. Staff finds that PUD is consistent with the land uses that exist, also supports the comprehensive plan recommendations listed on the slide, as well as these additional recommendations. I'll just pause a little just in case someone wants to read. A view of the subject property looking southwest. This is, I believe, and then a view of the property from Bunny Trail looking west. All the notification requirements have been accomplished to date. Only one written response regarding the request has been received. Just additional information about the zoning. The council has three alternatives: disapprove, approve, or approve with conditions. Staff is recommending, or will be recommending approval of the applicant's request as presented. At the March 6th Planning and Zoning meeting, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted to recommend approval of this as presented by the applicant by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Mr. Revelle. Mr. Revelle, during my tenure on the council, I have not seen a PUD layout that is so detailed and so community focused, like focus on the family. Your team, you did an amazing job. And we should see, if we go in a direction to build another PUD, it should be just as detailed and precise and community focused toward the families as this one. Kudos to you and your team. Great job.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Ms. Messer took the lead on this.
Was she here?
Yes.
Thank you for an amazing job. Thank you. With that being said, Councilmember Boyd.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Great job, Ms. Messer, as well as Mr. Ravel. Outstanding. Here we have, in my opinion, another well-planned, well-designed PUD for the city of Killeen, which does accomplish three major objectives. This particular PUD meets housing needs for our community. It addresses quality of life, as well as creates connectivity, all in one PUD. Some of the things I noted is that we have a diversity of housing, as outlined in the comprehensive plan. It offers retail opportunities midpoint on Bunny Trail, which do not exist right now. It connects Mohawk Road to Bunny Trail, creating access to Bunny Trail from Clear Creek. It also ties Bridgewood Drive into Goodnight Ranch, creating access to Stan Sluter. So instead of a lot of folks coming out of these subdivisions going on to either Bunny Trail or Clear Creek or Stan Sluter, there's different routes to get to those streets as opposed to navigating around to finally get to them, okay, which is outstanding. It also increases architectural standards, street trees, you've got the pavement design that we worked at, landscaping, fencing, as well as an entrance to the subdivision, which may be the first subdivision, or PUD rather, that has access with the sign. We don't have that now, so hopefully that becomes more common. The development also includes 10 acres of parkland and 22 acres of open space. Outstanding, working to solve that problem when I reference quality of life. It also accesses the future Bunny Trail passive park that you mentioned. It looks like you guys found a way to access parking, where that was an issue prior to, working with the developer, so that's outstanding. And most notably for me was that the PUD parkland is situated next to the Goodnight Ranch Community Park that we recently talked about, where they're now contiguous, where they complement each other. I had no idea, so that's outstanding, making the park even larger. So just super excited about that, but I did have three questions. The first question is there a name for this particular development?
Other than the name we've been using is Bunny Trail.
Okay.
But beyond that, I'm not aware of any name that we have.
Okay, just curious. Second question is relation to traffic and congestion. There wasn't much spoken about that. At the intersection of Bunny Trail and Mohawk, does this PUD trigger a TIA?
Yes, sir. So this project will trigger a TIA.
Okay.
The traffic counts are significantly higher than the thresholds.
Right.
So they will be required to provide that traffic impact analysis.
Sure. And I asked you this as well. I understand staff kind of has a purview to determine, let's say, a light is warranted there, whether or not it will be a light or roundabout. Are we able to consider a roundabout in that area?
Well, at this point, I really can't say. We do need to allow the traffic impact analysis to be done. That would really dictate what all will be necessary in order to address traffic impacts from the development.
Sure, thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
Last question. Are there any proposed masonry requirements for the varying types of housing?
No, sir. I think there may be some challenges with that related to.
State-related, right?
Yes, sir.
Of course, of course. I was just wondering if it was, since we were negotiating this through a PUD, if we kind of said, hey, how do you feel about adding additional stone to the different types of housing?
We've tried to just kind of stay away from it completely.
Gotcha. All right, very good. Thank you so much. And again, Ms. Messer, outstanding. Looking forward to this one. It's a great PUD for the city of Killeen.
Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Adams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a question, because we have the new drainage standards coming, when will this get started if it's approved, and would it be subject to the new ones or to the current ones?
Okay. You mentioned new drainage standards.
Yeah.
Now, I'm aware that our permits are being updated, so our stormwater permit is being updated. Are you referring to that?
Yes.
Yes. So this would be subject to those requirements.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
not the old ones.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
I believe Councilmember Adams was hinting to, there was a resident who spoke earlier about this development and the drainage standards, and I think there was some misunderstanding. She thought that the development would be able to be developed under some sort of old drainage standards, which is obviously not the case. The development would adhere to the current drainage design manual and all the drainage standards in
Yes.
Chapter 32. But I think what she was hinting to was when an engineer designs a drainage model for this subdivision, they're only allowed to allow as much stormwater as what is currently coming off the property. They cannot exceed that amount. So I think maybe that's where the train of thought was at, referring to what is currently existing. So the amount of stormwater coming off the property now, after it's fully developed and realized, they cannot release more stormwater than that. Hence why most developments have detention ponds. So
Yes.
just wanted to clear that up for the
Yes,
public.
yes, sir, that is correct. The post-develop, what they call the post-development runoff or drainage has to match the pre-development drainage. Yep.
Thank you.
PH 23021, hold a public hearing and consider an ordinance amending Chapter 31 of the Clean Code of Ordinances, providing for amendments to the city's land use regulations regarding residential structures on a single lot and permitted uses in R3F multifamily residential district.
Yes, ma'am, Mayor and Council and City Manager. Basically, this item here, as mentioned here, every single-family residential or duplex residential building currently has to be, there can only be one single-family residence or duplex on a lot. And that's what's currently written. And so as the second bullet says, no more than one single-family home or duplex can be on a single lot, even if the property is zoned for multifamily use. And so this ordinance amendment would modify that such that we can allow more than one single-family or more than one duplex on a lot that is zoned multifamily. And if it's a lot that's not zoned multifamily, it would still just be one structure. But if it's zoned multifamily, this will allow more than one single family or more than one duplex. This also, in addition to that, this ordinance amendment will allow two-family dwellings as a part of the R3F zoning district. Because currently, the R3F zoning district does not allow for two-family dwellings. It only allows for a single-family dwelling. It allows for triplexes and fourplexes. Seems like that was an oversight. For some reason, that was left out, but this would put that back in. So those are the two things that would be accomplished. This language here is showing what would be deleted, what would be added to accomplish those two purposes that I mentioned earlier. And again, this would accomplish that second purpose of allowing, in addition to basically the two-family structures to be included for the multifamily residential R3F district. The alternatives approve with modifications, approve as, or not approve. Staff is recommending approval of this, and we do believe that by approving this, this will open up development opportunities. It will eliminate some barriers, especially for your smaller acreage properties that are located in North Killeen. And we also do believe that this can open up opportunities associated with missing middle housing. The problem, the missing middle housing issue is not as great in the city of Killeen as it is in other areas, but what it basically says is that there's a lot of housing in the category of single family, and there's a lot of housing in the category of apartments, and there's not a whole lot in between. And so since duplexes falls in between those two, we're thinking that this can contribute to addressing missing middle housing concerns. Again, they're just showing some consistency with the comp plan. And then at the March 6th meeting, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted to recommend approval of this by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to thank staff for bringing this forward, and I agree. I think it's going to solve a lot of the hurdles and help to prioritize and incentivize redevelopment, especially in these aging areas of our city when it comes to infill development. So thank y'all for putting this together.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If you would, Mr. Ravel, help me to envision what the proposed amendment would look like for North Killeen.
Sure. So if there is a lot out there that's currently zoned for multifamily, and somebody wants to develop that lot, and let's say for some instance, they wanted an opportunity to put 2 duplexes on that lot. The way the ordinance currently reads, they would not be able to do that. If we change the ordinance, then it will allow for those 2 duplexes. Now, they still have to meet the area requirements, so there's certain requirements that still have to be met, but this would allow for that to happen. And so what that does, at least in my opinion, is open up development options. And if it opens up development options, then it opens up diversity. If it opens up diversity, it opens up supply, and that could open up affordability.
Thank you so much for that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera. I like it because it gives other developers the opportunity, if they specialize just in apartments or duplexes or home, give them the opportunity to build, and especially on the affordable housing. So that's very important on the north side. Thank you for that. Madam Secretary. I'm sorry, I apologize, my mic was off. I leave it on, but it went off, so I could have hit it accidentally. I apologize for that. Madam Secretary.
Yes, ma'am. PH 23022, hold a public hearing and consider an ordinance amending Chapter 31 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Killeen, providing for amendments to the city's zoning regulations, allowing for short-term rentals.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mr. Rivera.
This short-term rental ordinance will actually allow for short-term rentals. Currently, the way our zoning ordinance reads, as in the first statement there, they're effectively not allowed. So the intent of this would be to allow them with certain constraints and policies and controls that will be further expressed in the presentation. As you may be aware, we learned that there are 400-plus short-term rentals all across the city of Killeen now. The short-term rentals are not permitted under the zoning ordinance, as we mentioned, and so they're really right now being unregulated, and they're not paying the hotel occupancy tax. We've estimated, and these are some pretty firm numbers that have been confirmed by our finance department, that that's an annual revenue loss of about $700,000 in lost hot taxes, and then it also puts hotels that have to pay that hot tax at a competitive disadvantage with the short-term rentals. If approved, this proposed ordinance will establish requirements that will allow for the lawful operation of short-term rentals. This ordinance includes an annual registration requirement. It also includes that an annual inspection has to be passed. It also, as noted in the last bullet, establishes spacing requirements such that we don't have too close. That spacing requirement would be 200 feet between short-term rentals, which would become effective if this is adopted by the City Council 1 year after the effective date. And we believe that this will give opportunity for those existing 400 to take care of their registration needs and just make sure they can do that before we impose the 200-foot requirement. In addition to that, it has an intensity requirement so that for your multifamily structures, two-family or multifamily structures, there could be no more than 2 short-term rentals per building. In addition, this ordinance also includes a process for permit denial and revocation, also a process for making complaints and addressing those complaints, especially those that are deemed to be nuisance, with a lot of the stuff associated with noise and other matters being handled by the police, and then the other matters being handled by code enforcement. The council really has 3 alternatives that are noted on the slide. I thought it was important to note here, again, referring back to those 400 existing short-term rentals. If this ordinance is disapproved, short-term rentals will no longer be allowed, and there will be a need for us to develop a process to deal with those 400-plus properties. Staff recommends approval of the ordinance as presented. At the March 6th meeting for the Planning and Zoning Commission, the vote was 5-2 to recommend approval of the ordinance. the two dissenting votes. The first reason was associated with not wanting to affect the residential feel of places by having an operation of business, and then the other note was related to not wanting to affect the residential character of existing neighborhoods.
Thank you for that, Mr. Revelle. That's something that the council has spoken about on several. Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
I did have it on. I'm sorry. We have spoken about that in the past, and some concerns. It's not even a concern. For short-term rentals, that's a problem throughout the nation. People just decide to put on the site and just go ahead, open up their house, leave, and come back and collect the money. So that's a problem everywhere. My question to you, if it's approved by the council, who's going to regulate it? Would it fall up under your department, code enforcement? How would this work?
Yeah, so that's really going to be a city effort. So if this is approved, part of the first thing that's got to happen is a registration process. We contemplate that may involve engaging an outside vendor that may be responsible for that registration, tracking that and managing that, as well as for the tax collection associated with the hot taxes. But the city effort may involve the community development department, it may involve development services, it may involve police. Development services and police more so from a code enforcement, public nuisance standpoint, and then community development more so from the administration of the program standpoint. And then development services also may be involved from some of the permitting aspect as well.
Okay, and you got, I'm assuming, because I don't know, the 400 short-term rentals are on a site, but we know that in the city, they can pop up anywhere every day. Would that still fall up under code enforcement or word of mouth from a neighbor? Because I hear that a lot, and I send you emails that they say somebody just popped up here and rented out the home. So how would that work for the ones that we do not catch? Should there be, that's the $2,000 fine for that individual that have not registered?
So there are provisions in the ordinance that deals with those who fail to register. I don't remember the details about the fine, but there are provisions that would deal with that. What we envision that if this is adopted, that this ordinance will become effective on October 1st of 2023, so a few months from now. That time period would allow, again, for people to start doing what they need to do, to ready themselves to registration. And then, in addition, there's going to be that 1-year delay before we implement that spacing requirement. Because as you can imagine, for that 400-plus properties, they're all over the city, and some of them are probably closer than 200 feet apart. And so they will have an opportunity to deal with that within that 1-year period. But after that 1-year period is up, we will be enforcing, that spacing requirement.
Well, maybe I need to go home and set mine up, right? No, just joking. Just joking. Councilmember Alvarez.
Thank you, Mayor and Mr. Revelle. Again, thank you to you and the staff for being proactive and bringing this up. I think the presentation helps a lot capturing, $700,000+ annually of lost revenue, I think is an eye-opener. And like you said in the presentation, again, the rentals are already here, 400+ that we know about. All communities go through this. The rentals are there. People are doing it, especially with raising property tax bills, the higher that they get. I think this provides some relief for homeowners to be able to capture some revenue back on their property by putting it up as a short-term rental. I know that's a big draw to this. And, the other option, like you said, if this is not approved, it's not like the city has the staff or the capability or the legal ability to go knocking on people's doors and raiding their houses to see if they're running a short-term rental or not. So that's not going to happen. So they're going to remain there. We're going to not capture the revenue, and we're not going to regulate it. So I think, again, this is another no-brainer. As far as the business and the makeup of a residential-type neighborhood, the city currently allows home-based occupations to be run out of your house. Obviously, you can't have signage, but you're not going to have signage with a short-term rental either. You can sell homemade products from your house. People can come pick it up. I know some people are not fans of short-term rentals, but again, this is one of those issues where I see far many more pros than I see cons, especially, like I said, with these increasing property tax bills. Some people, will be able to find some relief by using their property as a short-term rental. So thank you again.
Councilmember Cobb? Yes.
I just wanted to agree with Councilman
Yes, sir.
Alvarez. There are home-based occupations that are allowed as a matter of right. It's allowed as a matter of right, and at least this has a registration process, a licensing process.
You finished, sir? Councilwoman Cobb?
I like it also. I think it's a nifty idea, but most importantly, because that funding will go to our arts. I was a past arts commissioner, and to be able to fund activities for families throughout this city with that money, I'm just already telling you where that money is going, to help families to enjoy the city and downtown activities, and for the Arts Commission to be able to bring shows and things in. That's a good job. That's good. I like it. And it also helps the constituent. So yes.
Councilmember Sagara?
Thank you. I know you mentioned that the annual loss is 700,000, but I didn't see anything and then I know there's a registration process, but does it say anything about how we are going to capture that money? Is that through the registration?
Yes. So I mentioned about the possibility of hiring that third-party vendor.
Yeah.
They would be responsible for kind of coordinating those registrations, but more importantly, ensuring that the hot taxes are collected. And so, yes, that would be addressed that way, through that vendor.
Because I know a lot of these companies, when you do register to rent a place, I think that they do charge taxes on there. And I don't know, if there's a way that they pay the cities, or we don't get anything of the taxes, right? When somebody registers for a short-term rental and they pay taxes.
Not without having an ordinance in place that allows us to
So
address that.
my question is would that allow us to collect right there on these companies' website, the tax that they charge?
Yeah, this will allow for that collection.
Is that what it?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, because that's what I'm trying to figure out, because
Yes, sir.
I kind of did the little calculation, 700,000 that we lose, and we have 400, that's about 1,750 per person. And so we're going to charge a registration fee, that's what it amounts to a year. But if we're just charging the taxes and they're going to pay us, the company, I don't know how that's going to work, then, that would eliminate us having to go out there and try to track this down, because it would be automatic. As soon
Yes,
as
sir.
they register, they pay taxes. We don't have to worry about going after them to collect this.
And I would state that there is a registration fee, but it's relatively small in comparison to what would be captured through the hot taxes.
Well, good. And it's an easy process to police it. I'm sure it's just a staffing issue, because basically you just go on the website and find out all the houses that are out there, and there's the ones you got to go after. But it does take time, I'm sure, but there is a policing. The other part of it, you mentioned 2 units, and I know that we do have a lot of fourplexes out there.
Yes, sir.
And a lot of them rent all 4 units out. I know a lot of them, and they have separate, not only do they rent the units out, they rent the individual apartments out. So you have a rental inside a rental. And so I don't know how that's going to work either, but, if that means that you can only rent one inside a unit, because houses do the same thing. They have a 3-bedroom, and each bedroom is rented out to different people. So that's going to be I don't know, something that we're going to have to look at.
Yes, sir. That data should be captured through the registration process.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Councilwoman Cobb, this is your second time.
I have a quick question for you. When we start collecting those taxes, will we have to pay the salary for those persons that we would have to add on? That's future look. But will it come a part of the city budget with regular staffing? Or do we take the money that we earn and not only do activities but pay people?
Mr. Cagle.
Well, we'd use that to pay the contractor.
It's a contract. You still have some, do you have any more questions?
Because if we're paying the contractor, are we gonna have any money for our arts commission and for our downtown? Are we gonna, you all
Yes.
know, I wanna know where that money is going.
Yes, but remember,
Okay.
the hotel motel, when we collect tax,
Okay.
off the top of my head, I think it's 15% that goes to the arts of the hotel motel. So you could
15%?
consider 15% of this would go.
Okay. I just always wanna make sure that if we're gonna do all of this work, that we're gonna have some gravy from it. Okay.
Councilwoman Cobb loves the arts. Councilmember Alvarez, this is your second time.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to add, a lot of these companies, I'm sure y'all been looking to see how many rentals we have, whether it's VRBO, HomeAway, Airbnb. Those companies do their own research, so once a community has ordinances in place, they automatically, so if you go on there to book, just like when you book a hotel, they're going to charge you that hotel occupancy tax on their site, and it comes back to us through the state. So the other thing I wanted to add was that a lot of these properties, I don't know if you've ever rented a short-term rental. I have when I visit different areas, and they're always nice properties. They're well taken care of because nobody wants to rent something that's run down. They're going to want to rent something that's going to be an experience. It's going to be nice. So I think that helps us also that these properties are going to be well-maintained, well-staged, well-taken care of because that's how they're going to rent. That's how they're going to maximize what they can ask for the property. So.
I'm just trying to figure out where the 400 at. But we're looking for, no, sir, I didn't mean that as a question. I was just saying, I was just curious. But we look forward to either voting on it next week. And thank you and your staff for your hard work. Council, due to, we're on the items for discussion at workshop. Due to DS-23-015, discuss continuing dissolving the Crime Solution Committee. I think I would highly recommend to the council that the Mayor Pro Tem, this is his item, that we make a motion or direction to table this item for discussion. Councilmember Adams.
Madam Mayor, I move that we table that to the next workshop.
Councilmember Board.
Second.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Adams, you had, no, okay. All in favor of tabling this, the motion or direction is to table this until our next workshop. Motion of direction carries. Pursuant to the Texas Open Meeting Law, VTCA Government Code 55. SEQ, the mayor now calls a closed meeting of the city council on the 4th day of April 2023, and the time is 7:46 PM under the following authority. A, Section 55(1.04) Personal Matters. The city council will conduct a municipal judge annual review. Public discussion for this matter will not be in the best interest of the city. Agenda item DS-23-039. B, Section 55.074, a personal matter. The city council will discuss candidates for police chief vacancy. Public discussion of this matter would not be in the best interest of the city. We are now going in closed meeting. Get the time. Just getting my words, I apologize. The council completed its closed meeting on April 4th, 2023 at 9:16 PM. Motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Madam Secretary, that was Councilmember Adams made the motion. Councilwoman Cobb second the motion. All in favor? Meeting adjourned.